welcome. I'm Dan McDermott. This is Google Plus Week, an unofficial look at the world's coolest social layer, or whatever you call it. Let's take a quick round robin with our panel. Let's get, let's see, from the far right, for direction purposes only, we have Pam Adger is here. Pam, welcome. All right. We have Michael Ellis here.
Hello.
Welcome, Michael. Michael Banks is here. Welcome, Michael Banks.
Hello.
We have M. Monica. Welcome, Monica.
Hello.
Jeff Zajas is here.
Ground the Dreamliner.
Absolutely. We have Craighton Miller. Craighton, welcome, sir. Good to have you back. He's here for his quarterly visit. In Lynchburg, Virginia, Bruce Turner. Welcome,
Does
Bruce.
social layer mean that we're a bunch of animals in here tonight? Is this like a den?
Indeed.
No, I see it more like a 9-layer cake, Bruce.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
We have Anthony Klauser, who's here.
Hello.
He's a mechanic on the jetliner, the Boeing 787. But he's off
Dreamliner.
So he's been off
Dreamliner.
for a few weeks. And we have my co-host, the incomparable New York-based Alan Firstenberg. That's all the information you'll get out of him. Alan, welcome, sir. Okay, so it's a busy week, and we are going to get to the Aaron Swartz story in a bit. We have some. We're going to have a lively debate on that. But first, we have a really exciting topic. That Michael Ellis.
This is the sort of thing where, we are Google Plus Week. We figure we should talk about Google Plus once in a while.
Thank you. That's why I put it in the subject matter.
Well, why don't you two, Alan? Why don't you want to, or either one of you guys, whoever wants to lead on this?
Let me toss it over to Mike Ellis to talk about some of the changes that hit Google Plus this week.
Okay, so I had a little trouble understanding what was changing exactly. Maybe everybody else had that same trouble, but this thing that Google uses called Quick Stream, at least that's how it's being called right now, Quick Stream lists. So you, at the top of your Google Plus stream, you have some buttons that represent your circles. And you only see the first, well, I think it was that you used to see only the first couple. And the change seems to be that they've added that you can now see 4 of them instead of 2 of them. And when you click on one of those, it simply changes your stream to immediately show the stream from the people that belong to that particular circle. So that's what changed. Now you can switch between 4 different streams quickly, rather than pulling down the list of circles and scrolling through your circles to change to a new stream. Now, Alan, is that the way you understood the change?
That's it exactly.
Okay.
This has been a change that people have been asking for since the feature rolled out, and everyone is just absolutely thrilled that we're seeing these major changes to Google Plus finally.
This is the most boring change they've made to Google Plus since Google Plus was announced.
I don't know. They've made some other pretty boring changes, but I think this is the most boring, most requested change.
Okay, I'll go with you there. I will say that it is nice that you can change your stream quickly to the circle stream that you're interested in. If you group your people either by how much you want to follow them or by topic area, you can, if you change your circles list, the sequence of your circles list controls what sequence those buttons appear across the top of your page. And so your most important topics, the ones you want to see all the time, you can make in that first 4 group. And okay, that's kind of nice. I didn't ask for any changes for it, though.
You noticed they didn't put communities in there.
Yeah, thank you for that.
This feature makes me realize just how little of a Google Plus Power user I am.
Because you're not. Because why? You didn't notice it, or you don't use it?
I mean, I guess I knew it was there. I mean, I know that I knew it was there, and then I forgot about it, and I have never used it except for because I've noticed it was there. I've never used it.
So Anthony, I got to tell you that I'm really a power user because I watched it change. I had more than one, of course. I have 15, 20, 30 tabs open on my browser. And I saw it change from 2 buttons to 4 buttons when I moved between tabs on my browser. So I saw the rollout occur.
Monica, what did you have to say?
So this is great. I think this is another step in the right direction that will get people moving towards the idea of switching circles, managing circles, and using circles, which any step that gets them more familiar with the platform is great. But one thing that I would suggest is color. Making each of these a different color to draw their... I know we all love our white space, folks, but a lot of people still don't. Their eye isn't drawn to these.
I would agree with Monica. Like, obviously, because I don't even use the future to begin with, but I could
see what I'm saying?
Like, I'm
How
not saying,
many of you?
Like, there should be like an on and an off option. You know, you can have it like the standard like gray colors, but if the user wants, I don't know, you'd have too many options, I guess.
I see Michael shaking his head no. And the reason why is there's actually precedent for this sort of thing. When you look at Gmail labels, you can set the color on the Gmail labels. Why not be able to set the color on the circles that are visible?
How many people use labels in this room?
I do a lot.
Oh, I mean, I don't use them a lot, but I certainly am glad.
How many of the average people use labels?
So Mike, you're saying they should remove labels?
I think tons of people use photos.
Yeah, they're just like folders in Outlook.
Are you saying label users are average people? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that label users are average users.
I don't think Google Plus should get the color thingy because one, it started going down a bad road. I think it's gonna whenever you say color and freaking social platform, I think of MySpace.
MySpace.
Yes, every time.
It doesn't have to be MySpace. It doesn't have to have glitter.
There is no color scheme that goes with that. With this,
Michael, I think the difference.
Google itself has color. It has color in the name.
Michael, I think the difference is that with MySpace, you are imposing your radical, psychedelic color schemes on other people, and in this sort of thing, the only person you're inflicting the pain upon is yourself.
And it certainly doesn't have to be arbitrary colors like, you know, like the green and red and yellow and the Google logo. It could be anything the user wants, or like I said, it could be, you know, just the standard what it is right now.
Yeah, we could talk about the color selection of everybody's lower thirds and what the psychological inference of that is, right?
Right. Correct.
Okay, are we good on this?
I think it's a simple, practical, and helpful
I don't
addition.
feel like we've covered this nearly enough.
I think
so now that we
on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a good solid 7. It's a good thing they did it. You know, they had the slider on there so you can move how much of the postings you want from each individual search. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
I think it's a good feature, and I think it's an indication that Google might actually remember what circles are, because they sure seem to have forgotten about that recently. Anyway, let's move on.
Let's go to the second topic. I have a question before it's related to the second topic, but it's not the second topic. With communities, if you have it, is there any way to get if you want notifications from a community?
Yeah.
Those niche ones that we're in that just have a few that are important to us, right? Not Google Plus Discuss, because that's all day long. Can you do it to where you get the red box but not an email notification? Or is it all or nothing?
Say that again.
It's all or nothing, but Dan, they've made it really easy to filter out the email notifications from a community. The community name shows up in the subject, and that's really trivial to filter out.
Okay.
Right. So that's what I do. I filter all the email notifications that come to me to a separate label because I use labels, and and I never see them unless I need to go there. And the only time I need to go there is because the notification thing works so badly in the regular UI that I'm forever missing some. So I go to my email to find the ones that I know I missed.
Okay.
I'm gonna use nested labels.
So. Yeah, I do that too.
Okay, so Mike, why don't you? That leads us nicely into our second subject.
Are we doing
tell us about?
Are we doing times, Mike?
Michael Banks.
I never got the countdown.
Can you start now, and we'll just know they'll all be identically off, and then I can adjust later. That would be great. Okay, so the next thing, I guess, settings about posts from. This isn't.
Why don't you tell us about this, Michael?
Okay, so settings for posts in communities. I gotta refresh myself on
this. You now have you can now control. There's a switch, whether your community posts.
Right. Whether your community posts show up in your personal profile, which only displays to you, I think.
No, this was the problem. This was the problem, is that people's community posts were showing up in the profile stream. So anybody who would wander into your profile stream would see your posts.
Yes,
and people
so
were getting horribly confused about this.
That's right. Now I remember. Thank you, Alan. So the whole point was that it was confusing because people, if you shared the same post to multiple communities and the communities were similar topics but somehow they got created separately and never merged, then you would look at your profile stream and see the same post several times, right? So that's I think a big piece of the concern here. Now you can turn that off so that your community posts don't show up in your profile stream.
Right. And people were objecting to it showing up in their profile stream for a lot of reasons, and this now gives them the option one way or the other. I think it's a good, solid change. I think it is, I don't know, I think they could have done it better, but I'm glad they did it.
But Alan, you still, if this is on, if you're in a private community,
if you're
only
in
people in the community who happen to be looking at your profile would see that if it was turned on, right?
That's correct. This still respects your privacy settings, and we'll be talking a lot about privacy settings later.
Okay. Yes, we will.
Okay, and then I guess +1 notifications or no more.
Well, that's an interesting question. I've seen I've seen no official word on this yet, but I've seen a lot of people talking about how there are +1 notifications when people +1 their posts, they weren't getting +1 notifications. And actually, we just got this comment just came in. +1 notifications about posts are back for me. Kayla was one of the people who I saw had commented about this earlier that I picked up on it, but she's not the only one. I've seen a lot of people talking about this today. So this either may be a glitch or a feature that's coming or who knows what.
Wow,
what do you have
I
to say,
really
Michael?
don't want to lose the +1 notifications. I mean, when someone +1 something that I've written, I want to see that. I want to be notified of that.
I don't.
Do you think it's a threshold issue? Like, once you get past like 5 +1s or 10 +1s, because I would suspect that people that are on the what's hot list don't want to get a notification every time someone +1s it.
That's what you do. Right. You get when you're on the what's hot list, literally every couple seconds.
Yeah, you have to mute your post.
It's insane. Right. I mean, it's nice that it happens, but yeah, you get all excited. What happens? Okay, here's what you do. When you're on the what's hot list, your ticker will constantly go. So, but it's only one notification per post, regardless of how many things have happened on the post. So then what you do, if you don't want to mute it, you wait until you have at least 2 notifications. And then you have a real one, right? Because the first one is always the what's hot thing. But it lasts about a day or half a day or something. And then...
So why doesn't Google make this a checkbox then, like they did with the communities?
Because this is Google. Simple. It's going to take them 2 months to make it a checkbox.
They don't they want as few options as possible. It's funny. They want to dump.
Are hard.
They want to dumb everything. On the one hand, they're like, we want to dumb it down because people get confused. But on the other hand, they're notorious for having the most complex UIs for every product. It's crazy.
Well, and that's the thing. They keep adding all these like really weird features that the average person doesn't really care about, but all you techie people do, and it's like, I just want to. I just want some.
I think that the balancing act is between getting it to the point where a new user can come in and just use it, and balancing it between that and giving the power users lots of features. Because like on Facebook, there's tons of features that you would never use. I mean, not everyone would use, like like their groups or whatever they call them. So it's just a balancing act.
Okay, are we good on the +1 notification topic?
Yep, I think we're all in agreement on this one. So
okay, the next thing, a bunch of us posted about, or I shared it and several of us shared it. Forbes wrote this article. I think it's really interesting. Bruce would be a good one to talk about this as well. The title of it is Forbes, or How Google is Forever Changing the Webinar. And what do you guys think about this? This is sort of praising Hangouts, especially with a business use case scenario.
Yeah, especially if you have a business, you can, if you have the business services, you can have up to 15 people in a Hangout. So, and then obviously on air makes it even better. So, yeah, it's a wonderful tool.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
Well, they talk about it, among other things, about it being free as opposed to some of the other pay services that are out there. I think Google is changing the webinar, but I'll be honest with you, if I'm doing a webinar or if people on my sales team are doing webinars, they're going to get a better experience using something like Zoom.us, which is free, which will allow 15 video participants with 720p quality video with better transitions from camera to camera than Google Hangouts has, and screen sharing that is, if Zoom.us is a 10, screen sharing on Google Hangouts is a 6 or a 7. So I think, it's helping because it's free, but I think there's room for improvement. And Zoom.us, you send a link to it, that people get it by email. They click on the link. There's a quick little Java download. Boom, they're in. But with Google Hangouts, they have to create an account and all this other stuff. So it's changing, but it could change a whole lot quicker if they would implement some better features.
Quick question for Bruce. They turned, with the paid accounts, they switched it to 15. You can have 15 people in a Hangout. Is this a beginning? Is this a sign that you think they're going to have other whistles and bells that are going to gravitate toward the paid accounts? Or was this just sort of a, hey, let's do this because they can switch it to whatever they want?
I can answer that already. We've seen that they've started adding additional features to the paid accounts that normal users don't get. In addition to the 15 people, they also are, we reported a couple of weeks ago that they're no longer bothered every 90 minutes to check to make sure you're awake. I think we're going to start seeing more and more of these kinds of features over time.
If you want a successful webinar, you want quality audio, quality video, and quality screen sharing. I don't need a whiteboard to scribble all over the screen. If they're thinking bells and whistles, they're going the wrong direction.
Yeah,
but think about this, though. Bells and whistles. Think about this, though. What if they make a guaranteed or make the Hangout more, let's say they put HD for Hangouts for paid accounts.
Yeah, they could do that, but what they, I think the first step they should do is have Hangouts on air to a limited audience, right? So a webinar to a select group of people that can join, get in, watch it, just like they used to have Hangouts on air before. You could select how many people or who.
Jeff, as you know, and I'm sure I'll let our listeners know as well. This is an issue that is raised just about every week to Dory, the community manager for Hangouts. And every week she says the team is well aware of everyone's request. This is an incredibly frequent request. They've got no time frame for it, but they're working on it. So
one workaround on that is to create a dead account. No profile picture, some crazy name, description, I hate you, go away, or whatever. So no one will circle you. And then do it. That's what, when I'm testing sometimes, I've got this other Dan McDermott account. It's a black, it looks like me, but it's a black and white picture. And I never engage on that. It's a legacy thing from before. So I use that to do a Hangout on air. I never have any viewers on it. If I go do something on my main account, I'll have viewers. Right. If I don't want them, then I just use that account. Yeah. Create some angry, hostile, account profile, and nobody will circle you, and you don't have to worry about it.
Webinars need to be greater than 15. It just has to be greater than 15, regardless. So
you need to have
true webinars.
Hang on, Jeff. Jeff, you need a webinar. You need more than 15 people actively talking in a webinar. Really?
No, but you have to have at least more than 15 people watching it.
Which is the
limited on air would solve that. But on Zoom.us, it is 15 participants. And that's it. It's not being streamed.
No, I would disagree. Many times, if you're doing a quote webinar, let's say one of my team members was presenting to a business that was looking at healthcare options, and a lot of times a webinar is just to a business site who's sending what you're sending through a projector onto a big screen where everybody's in a boardroom and can watch it, and that's just two people. It doesn't have to be a bunch of people. I mean, there are a lot of people. If you want to do one of these, salesy webinars, get an 800 conference line and have a bunch of people dial in, but a whole bunch of people on video talking and communicating can really make a webinar go off track.
Yeah, but then how do you explain, GoToMeeting and things like that being, very huge, because they can allow a lot of people, more than 15 in there, and
well, you can mute people.
But I'm just saying that's the issue. I mean, that they are already there. There are paid products that do that, and
Right.
and that's why they're paid for. Google's attempting to do it on the cheap. It's free, obviously.
Right.
But if they added those tools, it would just again kill that industry. I mean, they would just take it over.
There are too many other free products out there. Any meeting, Big Marker. There are tons of them out there. Free webinar things that you can use. So
But
Mike
Bruce,
Ellis, go ahead.
none of the rest of them have the name recognition that Google has. If Google comes out with this, it can be crushing to the industry, I think, if they do it well. But I think one of the I love the idea that they're adding all kinds of, I want them to add all kinds of new features, but I want them to add the features that GoToMeeting has, and that, now it's escaping me who the others are.
Mike,
Not log me in, but join me. Join.me is great.
Mike Ellis, do you have a paid account on the?
I do. Yeah, I do. For my
you would
business.
want to go to the selective paid apps account people, or would you?
No, I'm okay. But I liked what you suggested. I don't care that. I liked the idea that it's free because it makes it hugely accessible and you get a broad audience. So I like that. But you made the point about HD, for example, the true bells and whistles, the things that businesses need to use that most consumers don't care about. I want the controls that you have in. I want the controls that you have in a GoToMeeting session where I can raise my hand, I can mute the audience, I can direct the conversation, or direct what gets broadcast. I really want all those controls in a Hangout.
Okay, so we agree everything's perfect now on Google Plus, and they can move on.
And we'll only get better.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to do a quick, unbiased, in my newsy way, intro on our next topic, and then everyone else in the panel is going to yell and scream at each other. So this is the time to set your DVRs. All right, there's a guy named Aaron Swartz. He's very popular among the internet community. A genius guy. At the age of 14, he and one or two others created real simple syndication. It's called RSS, and that's how a lot of folks would use Google Reader to get links from different sites and compile them. It's a really cool concept. 14 years old, this kid did this. Then he went on to form a company, was a co-founder of a company that would end up becoming Reddit, which is the nickname front page of the internet, very popular destination, especially if you're ADHD, because every 10 minutes there's a whole bunch of new crazy things. It's awesome. So he formed a group. He made his money. He was set at a very young age. I think at 22 years old, he was didn't need to work. He formed a sort of a internet freedom type advocacy group, and they went on to start talking about and opposing a House bill and I think 2011, and it would end up, he started organizing opposition to it. That bill would end up being introduced the next year as the Stop Online Piracy Act, and the is it Protect IP Act or something in the Senate, but kind of the same thing. And then he was instrumental in organizing that boycott, or that big action by Wikipedia and a bunch of other sites where they blacked out for a day, or I think Google put up a blacked their logo out or something, had a thing, and a bunch of us put black squares as our profile pictures. I think
that was a year ago today, you might remember.
Because it's Internet Freedom Day, right?
Right.
So anyway, finally, there's a thing called JSTOR, which is I guess it stands for journalism storage, which was a library of documents that were research documents. You guys can correct me in a minute, but let me get through this because I'm ADD and it's like a flight attendant. You stop her in the middle and she has to start from the beginning with her thing. It was a bunch of government-funded research papers, but you had to sign up or pay to access it. So he was on MIT, which had a subscription, and he rapidly downloaded thousands of these things until they caught him. And then he did a similar thing in another situation. And he basically just wanted to take this information and he wanted to give it away. So the JSTOR ended up, I think, giving it away later anyway. JSTOR ended up dropping charges against him or not pursuing charges against him at some point. But the federal government opted to prosecute him, and he could have faced years and a felony. The prosecutor says that they made it clear to the attorney that they had no intention of pursuing the maximum penalty and that he could have settled for 6 months, and then but it would be up to the judge, and it could have ended up being a probation thing. They don't know. But in the last week, he committed suicide. And the first inkling I had about it was it was one of the, I think Bradley Horowitz posted and told a story about he was involved in the Occupy movement and stuff, and he wanted to use Hangouts, but they weren't quite ready for Hangouts on air. It was a very limited test at that point. So that's kind of where it is. Now the family said that this guy that he didn't kill himself, that the government killed him. Oh. And then, so let's lead with Alan. So that's kind of the background. Is that pretty accurate, Alan? I mean,
that's pretty accurate. I think the big thing the big takeaway on the suit against him was that he was being accused of federal wiretap and federal hacking and federal database penetration charges. And what it seems that he did boiled down to, he walked onto MIT, who is very notorious for having a very open campus and a very open network on campus.
He had a right to be on MIT's campus.
Monica, let me finish. He walked onto campus, he plugged his laptop into a wiring closet, and he rapidly downloaded the files which he was allowed to access. He was just trying to do it faster than he was normally allowed to, than he would be able to access it from his normal, through his normal method. They somehow have turned this into a hacking charge. And if you know the history of hackers, it is hacking. Hacking in the sense of trying to circumvent things that get in your way to do things in the best and most efficient manner possible. And that's a very MIT thing to do. When I first learned about this by reading a whole bunch of people writing tributes about him. Bradley Horowitz was one, a friend of mine named Sandro Hawk, who I've known for 20 years now. He wrote that when he would talk with Aaron, they would joke about how Aaron was in line to be the next head of the World Wide Web Consortium. That's how brilliant a guy this was. I think everybody involved, Lawrence Lessig is involved. He was one of Aaron's lawyers. Everyone involved pretty much will say that what Aaron did was not necessarily the most legal thing. However, and I don't think anybody will disagree with that. However, I think everyone is pretty much in line with saying that the charges against him were extremely, extremely trumped up. Or, sorry, trumped up may be an exaggerated word. Were extremely, extremely harsh, and that he was facing felony convictions for something that was not truly a felony. And with that, I'm now going to open it up to Michael and Pam to counter some of it. And Monica, trust me, Monica, I know you're going to jump in a minute, but let's get the other side saying something first. Michael, Ellis.
Well, I put up, these 4 articles, and you mentioned that it was hacking, and the first article that I put up actually was from a guy who was going to, had the case gone to court, was going to speak in his defense. And
that was his expert witness, correct? Was that
this was his expert witness, yes. And he argues that this is actually not hacking in any sense of the word, and the whole government's case is predicated on this old law from 1984, which was used to prosecute him. And there's actually one of the other links is now there's a movement to overturn this 1984 law so that this sort of thing can't happen again. And in the post which I made earlier this week, I linked to two law blogs by a lawyer who addresses these guilt without fault cases, which is where the government basically takes crimes that shouldn't be a crime, and then they basically want to pile charge after charge on, which is how you can get this sort of thing, which is like a case, and then you can end up with a potential sentence of 35 years for...
And this issue of piling charge after charge is something that came up in one of the comments. I want to bring it in. Tessa says they said the case, his family said the case and possible trial weighed on him very heavily, and that he suffered from depression. And I think that's true. This is a person who very much valued his freedoms, and he was facing, whether he was facing a long or a short jail time, he was facing the life of an ex-felon, and that's very harsh.
Yeah, but it's not. He has to be responsible and not take his own life and face the charges head on, and do it in a way that he could fight the charges in an open environment. He basically didn't do that, right?
Well, that's a fair point, Jeff. But part of from some of what I've read, including the first article that Monica listed, is that he was handicapped from doing that in some ways. For example, he wasn't able to create a legal defense fund. The judge, one of the early rulings was that the judge forbade him from creating a legal defense fund. So even people who wanted to help him out were unable to do so.
Do we know the reason for that? That's odd. I mean, this guy killed the guy in Florida.
The shooting in Florida. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
he was allowed to create a legal defense fund. In fact, they took his probation away because he didn't disclose the revenue from that. That was all out in the open. How can a judge deny you?
And I found that odd as well, but I found no other references on either side of that. But this is from somebody who's a lawyer.
But he has a case that the ACLU would take up, and obviously there would have been a lot of resources. Plus, he had his own resources to take.
Electronic Freedom Foundation.
Yeah,
Larry or Sergey probably would have written him a check if he'd asked.
Yeah.
He had Lawrence Lessig on his side. That was his Lawrence was one of his big lawyers. And I think there's no mistake that he had some emotional issues. I don't think anyone's really denying that either. The problem, though, is, Jeff, if a lawyer sits you down in a room with your lawyer next to you and says, look, I can get you for 35 years in a federal jail, and after that, you're going to be a felon for the rest of your life with everything that comes with. That means your chance of getting a job is lowered. You're not going to be able to vote.
So how much?
How are you going to react to that?
But hey, that happens every day to somebody who's in the military, right? I mean, that happens every day to somebody that's in a situation that's a disadvantaged. So they don't always kill themselves. So there's a lot of people who the government or lawyers want to instill a sense of hopelessness and beat you down and then have you plea bargain to something. I mean, that's a tactic. That's
right. Well, Jeff, that's part of the point, is that it's a tactic, and in some ways that's not necessarily a fair or just tactic.
Of course it's not fair, but they have the ability to do it, so that makes it fair and just by the letter of the law. They can charge any law that they deem fit on it, but he has to stand up for himself instead of killing himself.
So Jeff, you don't have a problem if somebody came to your door right now. And
I got a story. I have a story that actually I have a personal story about this. I was in the military. I was charged with something. I went to I'm going on here with this, but I went to the American Civil Liberties Union. They represented me, and I was able to, beat
You were able
the
to fight.
charge.
You were able to beat the man.
Yeah,
That's great. No, that's good.
but no, and I was 21 at the time in the military, and you want to know what power is? Have the military tell you that you are, going someplace and all this stuff, and they were absolutely wrong, but you have no one to defend you, right? And you're in the military, your rights are gone. I actually went outside, and I won. So all I can tell you is, you have to stand up for yourself and do it.
But Jeff, the man had a mental illness, so he was mentally ill.
But it's not who. But
that's not the government's fault.
But
it's not the government's fault. It's not the government's fault. Sorry. It doesn't matter that they screwed up and that they trumped up all these charges and they went at him, because all that stuff is legal. The fact that he killed himself does not make the government culpable in that.
Oh, really? Okay. Let me clarify exactly what he did. I'm looking here at a CNN article.
So
hold on, Monica.
Here's the thing, though.
Hold on, Monica.
I want to make one point really
on.
clear.
Okay, quickly, please, because
I
want to
make
explain
one point
what he
really
did.
Clear that in these sort of guilt without fault cases, if a bill like SOPA were to pass, and any one of us in the hangout if you were to have a child turn on your television and you were to start accidentally broadcasting copyrighted material, you would be guilty immediately.
That's right. Oh, well.
Right now, and
Yes.
they could come after you.
But Monica,
hold on.
We're subject to be
this conversation
for a felony.
Monica.
Because,
hang on, guys. Listen,
but my point is that
Monica, stop talking, please. I'm talking. We're proceeding as though what he did was legal. Okay, that's the presumption of this conversation. That doesn't appear to be the case. Let me explain what he did. In 2011, he was arrested in Boston, accused of computer fraud and illegally obtaining documents from protected computers. He was later indicted in an indictment in which he allegedly stole millions of online documents from from MIT. He pleaded not guilty. He had previously been investigated by the FBI after he released millions of U.S. federal court documents online. The alleged hacking was significant because the documents came from the government-run Public Access to Court Electronic Records, or PACER, which typically charges a fee, which in 2009 was 8 cents a page. So the guy was a genius. He had wonderful things about internet freedom, but he also went into a closet and, without authorization, downloaded thousands or millions of documents from MIT's computer system, allegedly with the intent to distribute them.
No. Go ahead, Anthony, go ahead.
How does not OIT? How does MIT feel about this? Did
they
MIT
dropped the case, and so did JSTOR.
MIT was kind of wishy-washy on it. MIT, when the Justice Department went to MIT and said, "What do you think?" MIT said, "Well."
Does anyone think what he did was legal? Alan, do you think what he did was legal? You can argue about whether the punishment fit the crime, the alleged crime.
I think what he did.
There was no punishment. There was no punishment.
No, I mean the tactics. But Pam, do you think what he did was legal? I don't.
It is not legal.
I don't think it was legal, but you know what? I also don't think that the government should have done what they did. But blaming the government because this guy couldn't keep his shit together long enough to face the charges, that's not fair.
Would it have been fair if he was found guilty?
No.
Do you think 6 months, something like that would be reasonable for this? Or
no, because you have to plead 17 counts of felonies.
Yeah. 17
Can I
comment?
Felonies.
Bruce, please.
I'm looking at a website now. It's I've been studying famous hackers, and there's one particular website that I like. It's got the 5 of the world's most famous hackers and what happened to them. And
they all have big budget jobs, right?
It's interesting to see these different hackers. For instance, Jonathan James, first person on the list. And a lot of these guys are intelligent. A lot of these guys are genius to be able to do what they did, to figure out how to do what they did. Jonathan James tragically committed suicide in 2008, believing that he would be convicted of crimes that he did not commit. But then you think about somebody, and this is a name that we all know, Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick was in prison. He was released. Then he went on a 2.5-year hacking spree. They caught him again, went to prison, ended up with a 5-year prison sentence. But now where is he at today? He had the mental ability to be able to deal with his punishment, willing to see himself even as a martyr. But now he's has a tremendous opportunity. Same thing with Kevin Paulson, who changed his ways, and now he's helping law enforcement to identify sex offenders on MySpace. So there are all these different hackers, and some of them, it's tragic. Anytime there's a loss of life, it breaks my heart, especially when you got somebody who has so much to offer and give. I hope that people will talk about, I hope this will raise the awareness of mental illness and how we can reach out and help people who are hurting.
Alan, this is civil disobedience in its classic form. He felt strongly about a cause. Allegedly, he went into MIT and downloaded a ton of documents that were not freely publicly available. His intent was to distribute them.
Dan, it's two things. One, there were a bunch of documents that he was legally entitled to get access to. He had a license to get them.
Let me tell you what.
But if you download thousands and thousands with the intent and the history of taking documents to release them.
He was a faculty member, which allowed him to access JSTOR's.
Even so,
documents.
I just read step by step of what he just did through the case documents. Freaking what he did was he got like a laptop, he created a fake website hosting thing to get people's email addresses because you can only access it through an email at a certain amount of time for a certain length. He created a lot of different steps to freaking do the campus's locks on the internet.
Dan, Michael.
But Alan, if you're going to practice civil disobedience, if you're going to chain yourself to the tree to prevent the developer from knocking it down, or refuse to leave the diner in a segregated town, then you are doing that expecting to get arrested. That's the whole point. And if you're gonna, clearly what he did was he was trying to sneak and used all these methods, as Michael illustrated. First, he did it over the Wi-Fi. They shut him down. Then he hid in the closet so he could plug into an Ethernet port. He was going to download the stuff and release it against their wishes and against their terms of use.
So Dan, let me ask you a question. How many years did Steve Jobs serve?
I mean, he was a busted. He and Steve Wozniak referenced the thing you're talking about. They called the Pope. They made what do they call it?
I have a question. How many years did the people who caused the mortgage crisis, the subprime mortgage crisis?
I don't want to get there, Monica. I know where you're going. I don't want to go in that route.
If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. It's not the government's fault this kid aced himself. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, really.
Well-intentioned. But if you're going to practice civil disobedience, you got to expect to be arrested and get your fine or whatever for it.
You asked a question whether I thought what he did was illegal. What he did, okay, not what he was presumed to eventually do with this, but what he actually did. And the answer is no. I don't think what he did was illegal.
Well, he wasn't ever tried. Do you think if he had taken them and distributed them,
he got charged? It was illegal.
That means that Jeff. That means that somebody, i.e., a federal prosecutor, thinks what he did was illegal. And that doesn't mean that what he did was illegal.
It wasn't for personal gain, but they never.
No, it doesn't.
The prosecutor
he was arrested.
The prosecutor said it wasn't for personal gain. That's why they didn't want to give him 36 years. But they said, they never disputed that his intent was to release them publicly. So he was trying to. Everything should be free, and he was like the Napster guy. And he was just like the Napster guy.
What do you do if someone, does espionage and releases,
troop
movements? Oh, let me finish.
Jeff, no. I want to stop you right there.
I'm going right here. No, let me finish. Let me finish. Come on, let me talk. What happens if someone does that and gives? I believe that Israel has a right to exist. My name is Pollard, and I am going to release all these documents to the state of Israel, who is our quote ally, and they're going to use them. I mean,
fine. Fine. Okay, listen. Who is going to be harmed by the release of the documents?
Of PDFs, scientific PDFs.
Monica, who is going to be harmed by release of the JSTOR documents?
Every publisher that puts in information through that system.
It's already free.
It wasn't.
They just released them freely.
They just started it free.
Week. They just released them freely.
It was not free at that time.
These were documents that you, the taxpayer, have already paid for.
You've paid for them.
But the federal court thing, it was 8 cents a page, even though it's federal documents. And the argument is it's to pay for the IT guys to run the servers and stuff, so they charge 8 cents a page. Now, if you want a federal court decision,
Dan, that's not this case.
What do you mean it's not?
That's a different case.
You guys are making wild analogies to everything else. I mean, and I think Jeff
No,
Zajas'
exactly.
Bradley Manning a reference, although it was not espionage, you had a guy who believed in something strongly and took a bunch of stuff and did it with the intention of doing a document dump for his cause. And again, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. If you're going to devote your life to some cause and you're willing to violate the terms of service, which he clearly did, he did that, and the government wants to charge you under this, I think it's a 1986 law, then, you can argue whether they were overzealous, blah, blah, blah. But if what she said is true, that they never insinuated, because there was no evidence that he had any profit motive. He was a rich kid. He believed in his cause. He was overzealous as well, and he violated the rules. And they shut him down once. Did this into the closet so he could plug into the Ethernet, because then he was right on the network. And his intent, based on his previous behavior with the court documents, was to distribute this stuff so people wouldn't have to pay for it anymore or go through these hoops to get it. So if you're willing to do that, that's not legal probably, although it will not be tried because I don't know how you drop charges against a dead person. I mean, how would you prosecute him in absentia?
It's been done.
Wow. I mean, but
it's standard procedure.
So we all agree.
You drop charges.
Any final thoughts, or are y'all going to beat this up some more?
I'd like to.
No, there's a lot of links in this. I suggest people who are interested in the case go read the links. There's a lot to this, but I think the bottom line here, and this is really going to be the bottom line, and then we will move on, is that this is a person who could have contributed a lot to our society, and for a number of reasons, he will not be able to do so. And I think that is truly going to be the last word on that.
Okay, Google was named the best company to work for for the fourth time. I think it was 2007, I don't know, 4 years.
4 years, not in a row.
Recently, not in a row. And this is great. So tell us why. It's the food and the $80,000 internship pay and on.
It's a lot of things. I titled this next session, and we've got a couple of articles that we're going to be talking about. This next section is called Google Corporate Awesomeness. And I titled this because we've got a whole bunch of really great things we're going to get to talk about this time. The first is that Google's been named for the fourth year, and I believe it's the second year running, by Fortune magazine, the best company to work for. And the article that came up isn't the one that I had read before, but I believe the big reason that they cited, or that they talked about a lot this time, was the very healthy attitude that Google was fostering amongst its employees. It's increased a lot of their food, the cafeteria is switching to healthier foods in general. They've been doing a lot of exercise things on their various campuses. As one of the Googlers I saw noted, said something like, no, this is a great place, we do this. Oh, and the tennis courts are pretty nice too. Anybody? Go ahead, Anthony.
My company, Wegmans, actually reached the #1 spot on Fortune's list the year before Google basically monopolized the #1 spot. And I don't think for a single second that my company is anywhere near as quality of a place to work as Google is. But I think that the biggest thing for these companies, because obviously I've worked for a company that's hit #1, and it's very prestigious, is mentality. It's the mentality of the employees. You know, at Wegmans, we don't have 5-star restaurants like Google does. We don't have tennis courts like Google does. You know, we don't have, free transportation like Google does. We don't have fitness centers like Google does. At one point, we did have a gym, in one central location.
Are you national, though, Anthony? I mean, are you qualified on this level? Or is it a national or regional? It's a regional chain, right?
It's a national. It was the national #1 ranking. But like what I'm trying to establish is that it's the mentality of the employees. You make the employees think that they're happy, and they are. happy. And like I said, Google deserves to be where they are because they do have all these great things. But you make the employees happy.
They drive their employees. They're very metric oriented. They're very goal oriented. Their employees have to meet certain criteria on a regular basis. So it's hard to work there. It's not easy.
That's why I think it's all the more impressive that Google, even with all these amenities that they have that do indeed make them a great place to work, is it's not easy to program for 8 hours a day, and probably a lot of these guys are working far more than 50 hours a week, 80 hours a week. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Google, and I'm most definitely not trying to take anything away from my own employer. But I just thought that I would add a perspective that I don't think that anyone else on this panel can provide, is that you work for a company, they treat you right, and the employees would treat the company right.
Well, I think it might also be, I've visited a couple of Google offices, and I've noted a similarity to one of my previous employers. I used to work for a green building company that was very similar to Google in some ways. The owners of the company sold just when the recession was hitting, and so basically that company doesn't exist anymore because the buyer sort of kind of destroyed the company. But one thing I've noted is about Google is that you're right, in that it's a culture thing. They treat the employees well, but they also tend to hire a certain type of employee. They make sure that each employee that they hire is a very good culture fit with the employees they already have there. And so, it's very harmonious, and the people work together well.
Monica, can you go into that on the culture? How would you describe, because the ones I meet are on their best behavior because I'm interviewing them or something. You know what I mean? I don't go to the campus and hang out and pull them in the corner and say, what's it really like? But in all the surveys where they actually privately poll the employees, Google always does well at the top, one of the top spots. What would you describe that culture that fits in? Whoever?
You want to answer this one? I've got an answer for you, Dan. When I talked to one of my friends who works at Google about this, he said, Google is, I said, what's it really like compared to other companies that you've worked for? He said, in some ways it's like the other companies. You have problems. You have disagreements about how to handle those problems. The difference with Google is that if you come up with a solution how to handle the problem, you're given everything you need to solve that problem. So so in other companies, if you're saying, hey, we've got this network lag and, we just need this kind of equipment to do it. Other companies will say, oh, what's the cost? Is it really going to be worth it? Google says, okay, how much?
Go into the culture thing, Monica. That's very interesting to me. You said that they look for someone who's a cultural fit. What is it? You talk about personality, work ethic. I mean, all those things. But how would you describe, if you were a HR person for Google, what kind of signs would you look in that initial interview from that person who would be a good fit?
I think they look for people who are extremely creative in their thinking, who really go the extra mile to basically find outside of the box solutions to make things work, but that also it's very easy for me to kind of spot. I was impressed when I visited their offices in that for other companies, accessibility is an afterthought, but for Google, it's built in. It's just a part of how it functions.
Alan, I'm sorry.
For me, that's really important because I'm, a wheelchair user. So for me, that's a part of everyday life.
They're lucky that they have such revenue that they can basically do, they can really treat people well. So here, the basic thing is
it's an integral part of everything. It's an integral part of being able to function and think well that you have healthy food and that you have access to exercise, and that, say, like, if you have a pet, that you know, like, if you want to bring your pet to work and, like, have your dog like sit at your feet, if that makes you be happier and work better, that you be allowed to do that.
Yeah, Dan, I think
like most companies.
Some of it is, yeah, they've got the money, they can afford to do some of these things, but some of what they're doing are fairly low-cost things, and I think it's the low-cost things that make their employees love them as much as the money that they're willing to throw at their employees. Let me give you an example. Let me give you a counterexample. One of the companies that did not make the list, Apple.
Well, they've always been a top-down dictatorship, right?
Another company that did not make the list, Facebook. Now, here are two companies that are rolling in money, that some of what, Facebook provides a lot of the same things that Google does. It's got this really friendly, loose, casual environment. It's got this, fun campus that people like to play on. It's a new campus. But they don't have the same kind of something.
Alan, let's get to that real quick.
Here's the thing, though, like you asked me this earlier, what my old company had and what Google has is it's kind of a let people be mentality. Like, if somebody wants, like to, bike to work and come in all sweaty at 10:30, like, it was fine. Like, if somebody wanted to have stranger work hours because that's how they work better, you let them do that.
But Google does challenge their employees. They want them to do better, So my sister-in-law works for Google, and she's been there over 10 years, and they always try to kind of push her up the ladder every couple years, giving her more management responsibility, more things like that. So I think Google does do that. They want the best of their employees, and they expect the best, and they constantly challenge.
Not that you don't have to work hard. It's just that you're
given all the support that you
need. Yeah, and they're
you need.
Yeah, and they're very flexible in terms of hours and how you want to work. If you can work at home, X amount of days, they let you do that. It's depending on your position, obviously. But yeah, they're very, very
I think
flexible.
The most important thing of all of this, they all pay well. I mean, Google, I think interns make $80,000 and engineers can make like, $130. And that they're at the top of the Silicon Valley pay scale at Google, but they're not far above like what you'd get at Facebook or Apple, any of these Microsoft places, because they're all very competitive, trying to get people. And there's a limited number of people who are competent to work at that level. And so one of their big gripes is they can't, I forget, it was the H-1B visa, there's not enough of them and stuff. There's a problem getting enough people who are competent. And money's great. The free meals, that's great. I used to teach school, and we had free lunch, anytime the dining hall was open, we could eat for free. I got paid, well, I think I was the 6th highest person paid there. But that doesn't matter as much as one thing that Alan touched on is if you have a good idea, not only will they'll acknowledge it, they'll give you credit for it, they'll give you the tools you need to implement it if it fits in with their plans, or they might adjust their plans. So they're still, even though, as Pam has famously said in the past, that Google does suffer from siloization, like any large company, where sometimes if there's a problem with one division, the other division can't really get to somebody to deal with it right, and you kind of get compartmentalized, and every company on this scale grapples with that. But the happiest I've ever been is when I had the ear of upper management. If I had a good idea, because I'm a creative type, then they would implement the idea. I felt respected. I felt appreciated. I had upward mobility, like I wasn't running in a mouse wheel, but I was on a journey. But the number one thing is to be appreciated and treated with respect and given the tools you need. And an attaboy wants to. I think that's even more important than just the straight up financial stuff. I think Alan has a comment from somebody. I've
got two comments. The first is from George Cozy, relating to what Monica said. I think Google looks for people who are technically creative and not so much for those who have creativeness and functionality. And I think it's an interesting point that he's making, that Google does tend to focus on a lot of the academic, the technical solutions when they hire their engineers. And that's an area that I think they're slowly, very slowly in some ways, trying to shift away from. But I think that is something that's been plaguing them so far. Kevin Bryan also says, Google's amenities for employees are part of why their products work so well. Happy employees make awesome products. And I think this is going to what Dan was getting at as well. There are a lot of ways to make your employees happy. Not all of them are expensive. I mean, it was, one of the things that, for example, this might come out of left field a little bit. Napoleon would talk about how one of the best ways to improve morale among his soldiers was just to award them ribbons, because that was a recognition, that was a little something that was decorative. It cost him next to nothing, but it got a huge boost in morale. And I think those are the things that Google does do, in addition to the massages, the lunches, the awesome physical spaces to work. In some ways, those are very relatively low-cost things that they do to hire and keep their best talent. But, and this is going to be the segue to the next topic, some of the other things that they do is they one of the things that I think they do really well is inspire their employees by trying to do awesome things and have them shoot for them. And this ties into an article that appeared in Wired magazine, an interview by Stephen Levy with Larry
That was a
Page.
pun just then, Alan.
It was.
Shoot for them. That was a
Shoot
pun
for them.
to the next
Well,
segment.
that's
An unfortunate pun. Go ahead.
No, it was deliberate. And the title of the article is Why Moonshots Matter. And the idea is basically was Larry Page saying you need to create big, lofty goals and set your team to achieve them. Not just try for them, but to achieve them. And he was basically, one of the things he said in this interview, which I think will resonate with a lot of people, is it's great to say, let's have a 10% increase in productivity. And a lot of companies will be satisfied with that. And he goes in with the attitude of saying, we're not shooting for 10%, we're shooting for 10 times where we are today. He's saying, hey, it's great that we are working on progressive and incremental improvements in search. But at the same time, we need to be doing revolutionary things like Google Glass, like driverless cars, like all of these things that seem way far out, but that if we work towards them, we can achieve them. So I think having this range of short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals is a great thing, and that inspires his employees, and that's what keeps him going to work on a daily basis, I think. Has anybody else read this article? Any other thoughts on
I read it. It was
words
great.
of wisdom from Larry Page? Monica.
Yeah, it was one of the most inspiring articles I've read in a long time. And I think that more companies need to think this way, that this is what drives the free market, and that if we ever want, hope that America will stay great and that we'll solve some of the biggest issues we've got out there, we have to have more companies thinking this way, because it's not enough to just think small. We've got to think big. It's this big sort of thinking that got us, that got us to the moon, really, which is why it's titled Moonshots.
Yeah.
You have to set audacious goals in order to achieve audacious things. You don't set a mediocre goal.
One of the things that I really liked about this article, or actually what I really liked about what Larry said was, it's every time they write an article about Google, it's about competition. This isn't about competition. Well, it's come to the point where there's this drive to satisfy these shareholders at the expense of things like innovation and real meaningful forward movement in companies, because they're chasing this bottom line. And Google is big enough now that they don't have to do that. And that's makes them really unique. And that I just really liked what he had to say about
they
that.
don't have to do what?
They don't have to chase that
Every single thing they do doesn't have to turn a profit within the next 3 months.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is shocking.
Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great. It's a tremendous book, and it tracks how some companies went from good to being great. And one of those good to great things is this idea of the moonshot, or he calls it BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. The other is getting the right people in the right seat on the bus. I think Google does a great job on both of those factors. And so, yeah, it's a great book and great article here about Google.
They also do like $12.5 billion a quarter, right, Alan? So you got some.
Don't quote me on the numbers.
You got some wiggle room.
Well, but you know what? What this reminded me a lot of, what the interview with Larry reminded me a lot of, was a lot of the interviews you used to see with Walt Disney, for example, or the articles written about Walt Disney. You know, when he would be churning out small cartoons, and he'd go to his brother, who was the finance man in the organization. He'd go to his brother and say, "Hey, I need money to make a feature-length cartoon." And his brother would say, "We don't have the money, and nobody's going to pay for a feature-length cartoon, and you'll never make any money on it." And Walt said, "Sure, I will." And he did it. And then years later, he said, "Hey, let's make a live-action movie with neat special effects." And his brother said, "We can't afford it. There's no way you're going to do it. Forget it." And Walt did it, and he made money on it. And then years later, he said to his brother, "Hey, I'm tired of making movies. Let's make a 3D movie in the shape of a theme park." And his brother said, "You're nuts. We don't know anything about making amusement parks. We don't know anything about all of this stuff. We're never going to make money. Forget it." And he did it. And that's the same kind of attitude that I see in Larry Page. One of the other things that Larry said is, somebody would come to him with an idea, and he would say, "Okay, that's fine, but do it better." That's the same kind of attitude you see from people like Walt Disney, where his illustrators would come to him and say, "Here's an idea for a cartoon." And he would say, "Well, that's not bad, but you can do better."
That was another thing in the article I really liked, is like, one of the engineers could have invented a time machine, and brought it into Larry's office and plugged it in, and it works. And instead of Larry being blown away that it works, it's like, well, maybe you could have built it without power. Does it really have to have power?
Does it really need to be plugged in? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
The cat's back.
Yeah, I don't think that innovation and pushing for these lofty goals and making a profit are mutually exclusive. I think that they're in the innovation business, or they better be, if they want to survive. And so I think they pretty much have to do these things.
So I think this is a case where we are all in agreement. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next one? Okay.
We like Google in general.
This next one, Craig, I'm really glad you're here, because I wanted to get your take on this one. This is a story I found in the New York Times, and they were talking about a contest run by USA Today to old media advertising, or old media systems, talking about a contest that USA Today ran for print advertising that Google won. And a lot of people were very critical initially when they saw Google entered into an article to create a print advertisement. And then when most of them saw what Google had produced, they agreed this was one of the best print advertising they had seen in a while. And what this advertisement was for was, it was an advertisement for Google Hangouts. You might remember way back in the early days of Hangouts, Desmond Tutu was having a birthday celebration, and the Dalai Lama was scheduled to appear, but was unable to do so for a variety of reasons. And initially there were a lot of reports he wasn't going to be able to make it. Sorry to hear that. And then they instead held this summit on a Google Plus Hangout. And this ad very, very perfectly captures, in a print media style, what a Hangout is and how it could be used in that way. And Craig, I know how much you've said about old media. I want to hear your thoughts on what Google did and how they did it.
Well, I mean, I think you should use all sorts of media. I think that print has its place, and I think that Google needs to be creative at all levels, and they need to I've said before, they need to reach out and they need to get John Q. Public in here any which way they can. And I think up until now, they're failing at that. And so anything they can do, really creative print ads, really creative TV ads, absolutely use old media. Use old media to kill old media. In other words, while it's still around, buy up space in there and advertise your alternative. We're a perfect example. We're all in here. We're not watching television. At least I don't think anybody in here is watching television right now. So we have been taken out of the old media market right now. And so if Google can use all sorts of old media to reach out and grab people and pull people in here, then they can use old media to finish old media off, if that makes any sense.
It does. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I do. As I could talk to this as a newspaper publisher.
Mr. Old Media.
Right.
Would you run their ad, Dan?
Yeah. You think? Yeah, I think the ad's fantastic. It really is. All the topics we're discussing, we have links beneath the video. If you're watching on YouTube live, we don't, but they will be when we post it. But I'm looking at this thing, and it's a fantastic ad. It's very creative. Their ad agencies are just phenomenal.
Go to Bruce.
Can you put it up on the screen?
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Go to Bruce Turner, who has it.
Let me.
And Bruce, if you remove your lower third, we might see it a little better.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, there we go. Yeah, it doesn't look like a $1 million winner, but there it is.
Yeah, it's awesome. They can you control minus just to bring it back just a little bit so we can get the
we got a little bit of a crop on some of the text. Anyway.
Yeah, so what they're doing basically there's a lot of white space in this ad. And there's sort of you're sort of like, what in the world is this? And so you look at it, it draws your eye to it, and they're just sort of making the point that what an event that might not have happened was made possible via Google Hangouts 3 days later. And it was just really creative. And underneath this text, there's a bunch of white space and then the Google logo. So it's cool, innovative, cutting edge, and that's what Google does. But they're in a print medium as they do this. So I think it's fantastic. Look at that ad. That's fantastic.
Well, and what's also neat about it is they made it very old-fashioned looking. So they further emphasized the fact that it's old media.
But really, if you saw that ad, Craig, you absolutely would look at that and try to figure out what the heck they're talking about because it's so unique.
Sure.
That's what they were rewarding. They were honored by a panel of judges for USA Today for encouraging innovation in print advertising. And of course, that's ironic because they're destroying print advertising.
And I think they should do more and more of it. I think they should buy full-page ads in your newspapers.
Is it fair to say you think they're destroying print advertising, or do you think that evolution is just taking its course?
I think.
Well, they're one of the major factors, Monica. I mean, they're a major factor in it. There's no doubt about that. But it's going to die no matter what.
Does Google still do print advertising? Because I'm going to get details wrong.
They got out of that business. For a while, they were doing print advertising, and they were doing. When you say
clarify what you mean by doing,
they were basically making it cheaper for other people to do print advertising by buying bulk and then right.
It didn't work. It was we're just so people don't confuse. We're talking. They got an award for a Google ad in a newspaper, and then Anthony's kind of switching the subject to they had sort of an AdWords for just like they had a. Had a TV. I think you can still buy TV commercials, but I
think they've stopped that actually. For a while,
one of their experiments that
For a while, they were an ad agency for all media, and I think they've phased out all of their other besides online media at this point.
Sort of the Nexus Q of their advertising.
We'll be talking about the Nexus Q on Mondays, our Android week.
Oh, okay.
I bet you that they could calculate out how much they could spend in old media advertising, print advertising, like in the New York Times, in local newspapers, whatever, how much they could spend there advertising products such as this, and without giving them a lifeline. In other words, not spend so much that they'll survive, right? But spend enough so that they take more and more people away from them and into this venue and let them continue to die. I bet you they could calculate that out, and that's exactly what they should do.
Before we switch, can I ask Jeff a quick question, because he's getting ready to roll?
Okay.
You're making chicken curry or what? What are you making?
I make chicken curry from scratch using kabocha. I don't know if everyone knows what kabocha is. And chicken.
Let's assume, for argument purposes, we don't know what that is. That not everyone knows what that is.
It's a Japanese squash. Okay. Are
you using like a jar? Are you really making it? I mean, you got like.
Yeah, no, I make it from scratch. I use curry powder with oil and make it from scratch. So yeah, I've been cooking it for a couple hours and it's almost ready to go.
We would love a picture. Can you post a picture? And
I could later on. Yes, of course.
Before you eat it all, you gobble it all down. Okay.
No. All right. Big batch.
Yeah, I'm stoked because I used to live in India, as you know, and I like curry hot enough to blow a hole in your socks. Love some curry and the breads. The curry, even from scratch, is a lot easier to make than those breads. Oh my God. It's like the fifth time you kind of looks right. Okay, speaking of, we're not at all speaking of this. Alan, I guess Google is donating a significant chunk of change to an energy foundation to support not like green energy necessarily or renewable energy necessarily, but this is really interesting, more intelligent energy use. Why don't you explain what that is?
And this is actually Monica, so I'll turn it over to her.
Monica. I was going to say, I know Monica's going to want to talk about this. I didn't know she'd put it in. Go ahead.
Yep, I added this one. I was really happy to see this, and they donated this to support more intelligent energy use. It's actually to support policy reforms that'll help lead to more intelligent energy use. So basically, the quote is, what if instead of a monthly bill we had access to more real-time and actionable information about our electricity consumption, like appliances, air conditioners, and lights adjusted automatically to use energy more efficiently and save money. If we did this in every home, it would help improve the reliability of the grid and save billions of dollars. So basically, they're looking to challenge rules that govern electricity distribution, given that they were written for last century's grid.
You know, I'm glad to see they're doing this, but there's a part of me that is a little bitter about it. 2 years ago or so, they launched initiatives. I believe it might have been through Google.org, which is their nonprofit branch. Although it may have been within Google itself, to start doing things like pushing technology for smart grids, pushing home monitoring, and pushing the whole data-centric or Google concepts to energy management. And it was one of the projects that they shuttered within the past year.
Oh, really? What was it called?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to go looking for it.
We covered this during the show, right? And I thought Monica, well, obviously weeks ago we covered this during the show. I thought Monica commented on it.
There was another energy one about a week or two ago, but that was a different one. It was about a wind farm purchase. And this is just about basically raising awareness of electricity consumption.
They've done a lot of things in terms of energy consumption in their data centers. This is about helping utilities, helping municipalities, and helping consumers do better with their own energy management. And it's been something they've tried to deal with over the years. I remember them working on something, and a lot of people getting out, a lot of startups who were looking to do that sort of thing kind of bailed when Google was looked like they were getting into it themselves, and then Google bailed. So
I don't remember.
I'd have to go look up the details myself. So on one hand, I'm thrilled to see this. I'm thrilled to see anybody who is pushing for radical changes in how we think about using energy to do it better. But there's this part of me that's like, I've seen Google start to do this before, and I worry that they're going to bail midstream again.
Well, what's the implementation? I mean, I would argue that we're at a critical stage in which we have to address this issue. 2012 was the hottest year on record in the 48 contiguous states. And, we're reaching a critical
We're still
era
technically in the
climate
ice
change.
age. We're still technically in an ice
We
age,
are not
which is defined
technically
by
in
two
an ice
polar
age.
ice caps.
We
are
are
technically
not.
in an ice age.
Although
I did enjoy fishing a week ago in January.
Well, I'm happy you did enjoy your fishing.
I'm messing with
but
you,
I
but
do
we
have
are
to state
technically,
that we
by
are.
the legal scientific definition, we are actually at the end of the last ice age.
If Monica's going to point out the fact that the United States was the hottest ever, I'd just like to point out that Antarctica added 2 inches of ice this year.
No,
so.
actually, it has been proven that the West Antarctic ice sheet is actually losing ice. It's the first time ever that we have known this. There was debate about whether it was actually losing ice, but that means that the ocean levels will be rising because the Arctic ice is already in the ocean. Even if all of it melts, we would not have a change in sea level.
Well, this isn't a debate that I want to get into, but there's sources that say the north melted and the south rose. So
Please, God, we're not going to debate. Okay.
Right.
Well,
anyway, my point
regardless-
is that we do have to be conscious consumers of electricity.
Regardless of all that,
Go ahead, Craig.
If we can do things more efficiently, in other words, if they can come out with LED light bulbs that will light me right here for 1/10 of the energy. I've got an incandescent one over here. Actually, these are both what do you call those?
Non-incandescent.
They're
CFLs.
Yeah. Which
compact
I hate.
fluorescent tubes.
Yeah, compact fluorescents, which I hate. So if they could come out with LED bulbs that give the same amount of light for, let's say, 1/10 of the energy, that's great. So, if they can come out with affordable bulbs that do that.
That's the key word, though. Those LED bulbs are ridiculously expensive.
But the prices have been coming down.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing.
I'm sorry.
What Google, and these are all great things. I'm not going to debate a single one of them being bad efforts. Focusing on what Google is trying to do, though, they're saying the way we generate electricity and the way we ship that generated electricity to your house right now is incredibly wasteful. We lose a lot of electricity just by the transmission over the wires.
Any of these things that we can do to improve our use of energy is good, regardless of global warming or any of that.
Right. So what Google is saying here is, let's take a look at, there are people who are looking at compact fluorescents and are looking at ways to cut our electricity usage on the consumer side. That's important. There are people who are looking at how do we generate electricity in new ways, because we're going to need more. No matter what we do, we're going to need more. And that's good. And here's Google saying, hey, there's this big thing in the middle that very, very few people are looking at. We have the electricity system, the electricity transmission system that we use today was designed in the early 1900s. It's a century old, and it has been essentially unchanged in all of that time.
So don't humans know better ways to do this? I mean, basically...
No.
Basically...
That's the problem, Anthony.
There's innovations like the bloom box and stuff, but we're...
Wait a minute. So basically, as best as I understand it from, not looking into it specifically, we're basically on first generation electric grid, Edison's in America.
No.
But other countries have newer...
Anthony, I just wanted to stop you there. This is not Edison's grid.
No, this is Tesla's grid.
This is Tesla's grid. And actually,
Edison's grid is your car battery into your alternator.
Well, it's an interesting point. Right now, in fact, a lot of ways of what we're trying to do is move back towards Edison's grid. Edison, when he designed his electric system, called for power generators that were essentially, within half a square mile of where they were going to be consumed.
Because he was for direct current, which had to be that
exactly,
way.
Which had to be that way. The brilliancy of alternating current was that you could ship it very long distances. And now increasingly we're saying, hey, we now have the technology to generate things much more locally than we used to. What savings can we get by not having to ship it long distances?
Yeah, listen, any big company has a vested...
People are asking.
Any big company has a vested interest in the whole subject matter of waste and efficiency. They all do. They'll have incentives for their employees to come up with ways that we can do things cheaper and better. So I think this is good, regardless of whether it's about energy or anything else.
Well, it's interesting because my company replaced, all the light, all the lightings across all the buildings. That's like at least 80 buildings, and obviously the cost of replacing all of that equipment is massive, but the energy savings, calculate up so quickly that it just makes sense. And like Craig was saying, this just makes sense to do.
Yeah, okay, let me sum up. This makes sense. You could be the biggest Fox News watching, AM radio listening, storable foods buying, global warming denying, the government ain't going to get my guns dude, and that's totally cool. So, but it's efficient, and if it can be done cheaper, it's a national security issue. I don't like relying on other countries for our oil and stuff. So even if you think that global warming is total BS, that's totally cool. For national security reasons, you should still support, more efficient energy stuff. There are many reasons why this is a great thing.
If my pickup truck can do 0 to 60 a half a second faster and get 10 extra miles to the gallon, then that's good.
And it's working. In fact, in Virginia, there's the new transportation bill from Governor McDonnell is going to impose. Get this, they're going to impose a tax on like hybrid vehicles, because the way they've funded the roads is from the gasoline tax. Well, these newer, more efficient vehicles aren't buying any gasoline, and so they're not generating enough tax to build the roads, but they're still using the roads. So they're actually, while Obama is paying you to buy a hybrid, Virginia is going to actually charge you for buying. I don't know. I guess it'll even out in the wash.
We could get into what Virginia is trying to do, and I'll deal with Virginia another time.
Absolutely.
Let's
What's
move
next,
on.
Mr. Firstenberg? This is interesting because I know we have an Apple fanboy here, so I know Craig and Craighton as well. These guys are just kissing. I mean, in the commercial breaks during the show, they're just my iPhone.
Anybody
my
that
iPad
operates
Mini, Craighton.
Anybody that operates efficiently will have one of these. That's correct. It's funny. Your phone, I actually measured it. Your phone is actually the exact same size as the battery. Your iPhone's the same size as the battery in my Note 2.
I'm not sure that's something to boast about there, Dan.
Your 1400 milliamp battery versus my 3100. Okay, so Alan, tell us about
So yours
this
is bigger,
strategy.
Dan? Is that what you're saying?
It does matter. It does matter,
and
Pam.
it uses more energy.
And I'll see you on Thursday.
And it's causing,
the biggest reason
meltdown.
anyone who's ever uncircled Pam as it occurs on Thursday. Okay,
so we're 1 hour
go ahead,
and 15
Alan,
minutes into the show, and we're heading downhill rapidly.
Topic 6. All right.
So this story was one in the New York Times, talking about trying to answer the question, why in the world is Google making products for the iPhone? And they don't. I mean, I was kind of bugged by it. They didn't really answer it, but it kind of boils down to people still have a much better impression of Google's software than they do of Apple's software. So while everyone thinks the iPhone hardware is great, they think that Google's software on Apple's hardware is even better. And I think it's an interesting perspective. It talks a little bit about
this. Who thinks this?
Everybody.
Well, I don't know.
It's not just Google that makes software, though. I mean,
yeah, I love this. I love
software
all
too.
the software on my phone, but the Google Plus app, excuse my French, sucks. So I mean, I don't know how you can.
So Craig, if we compare let's say Apple Maps versus Google Maps. What would you go for?
let's every few minutes. Let's bring up
my Apple Maps have worked fine for me every time I've used them. I haven't had any problems.
See, you guys are just blatant propagandists.
FaceTime or Hangout?
But no, think about it this way. I use Camera Plus, Lisa Bettany's Camera Plus app. It works great.
Why don't you switch? Yeah, that's a good question for Michael, Craig. Why don't you switch to FaceTime for your Hangout shows?
FaceTime.
Yeah,
FaceTime only supports one person.
Why don't you use FaceTime for your Hangout-based programs for Hangout 10? FaceTime10.com. Have you got that domain?
I didn't say that there's nothing that Google does right. There are a few things that Google does right. But for you all to sit here and act like
they're so-so on search, at least.
Work. I mean, come on.
Craig, did you read the article?
No, absolutely not.
He doesn't need to read the article to disagree with us.
That's right. I mean, but the article come out and say that
the article is saying
that Google software is better than Apple software. I don't know where that's totally out of left field.
Craig, this goes back to the discussion we've had time and time again about it being perception issues. Google has a really great name when it comes to things like Maps and YouTube and some of the, a number of their apps. That's where they have their name. That's where people have the perception that Google is great. Apple has a perception of having an awesome piece of hardware. It doesn't have the same perception about having an awesome set of software.
I disagree with that.
That's a perception. What? No,
come on. I mean, the whole experience with the iPhone is bulletproof, reliable, including the software. That's why
Craig, people don't think of it in terms of Apple software. They think of it in terms of the iPhone.
Yes.
Yeah, but the apps that are running on it,
people don't think of it that. But that's not how people think of it. That's not how people think of it, though.
You don't think that people think of the iPhone as an Apple device?
No, they think of the iPhone as the Apple device. They don't think that the software that's running on it. They don't think that the software running on it is Apple software.
I think software, hardware, I don't think they care. They just want a device that works.
Well, that's it.
That's why we buy this. We want something that works.
So Craig,
that's why we don't buy Android, because we want something that works.
So Craig, so you mean you didn't buy the iPhone because of all of the apps?
I don't even think about it. I use it, and yes, I'm using apps, but I think about the task that I'm trying to do. As long as it'll do that task.
But that's
look at like my iPhone runs.
So when I just want to touch on the bulletproof reliability when the phone doesn't wake you up when you've set the alarm. I mean, every year.
My alarm works perfectly. I use it 5 times a day.
Yeah, okay, Craig. We know that everything works for you that works for no one else.
You have a problem with your alarm on your iPhone?
I've never had a problem with my iPhone.
I've never had a problem. Alarm constantly.
Just like
I've never had a
that
problem.
hold their phone like this and are getting perfect reception on their iPhones, and the people that alarms are not going off because.
I guess I'm just lucky. And I'm not going to buy an iPhone 5 either because mine's working so damn well. I'm just going to keep this one because obviously if they all give trouble, I'm going to keep this one iPhone that actually works.
I decided to follow Google.
The point of the story, though, is that the average person, is going to say, my iPhone runs Gmail awesome. I mean, it runs Gmail and Google Calendar and Google Plus. I mean, it just runs everything that I want it to. And they're not saying...
Yeah, but the Google Plus app isn't that great on it.
Is so awesome. They're saying Gmail.
Okay.
At the end of the day, though, I don't think it's about because Google has apps on iOS. It's about that they're making it available to people. That's all they're doing. It's not really a competition between app versus app. It's that your app is available on multiple platforms because people demand it.
Right.
People demand.
But Google Camera Plus isn't available on Android.
Nobody's demanding it.
That's the developer's fault. That's not. You got to see these big companies though. These are big companies and they have a huge user base, and they're not taking advantage of the huge user base that the iOS has. So I don't think it's more about because the apps are better. It's that the user base wants what their experience is online to come to their mobile device, which happens to be an iOS device. I mean, it's available on. Well, I can't say it's available on Windows, but yeah.
Anyway, I think we're all in agreement on this one.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next subject. This is an interesting angle that we've seen over and over and over again for a year now, but now, for a decade now, and now Google is tackling this issue, and that's that Google is trying to get rid of the password, and their latest attempt to do so is with some bit of hardware that's integrated with their browser. And Michael, I think you added. Did you add this one, Michael? Nope. I don't know who added it then, but so basically what they're trying to do is they've got a little bit of hardware that will plug into your computer, and you will have a dongle or a key or a ring or something that you'll then be able to touch to your computer or wave at your computer or something, and that will authenticate you, and that will log you into Gmail. And I see Pam already laughing at this. Or was she laughing at something that Dan said?
No, I'm laughing at that. I mean, you know how many times a week I lose my freaking keys? I mean, I don't want a dongle. I just want to, just the password's fine.
Can I get that on the record, Pam? I don't want a dongle.
We're all lucky that there's not a day of the week that rhymes with D or that starts with D, because Pam would create
dongle day.
Oh dear.
Oh, I don't know if we can continue the show after this one.
Oh boy.
So this is probably NFC, right, Alan?
Well,
this is a continuation of other methods like the eyeball scanner, or you can get the fingerprint scanner to check in at a gym sometimes.
The fingerprint scanners
suck.
The fingerprint scanner is an interesting one because it's a clear case of how not to do security. In so many ways, that was a clear case.
Tell
of
me,
how
because
not to do
I actually
security.
I have a place that I have to use it at.
Really?
And it works every time. It's never failed.
Oh, well, except for the fact that anybody can get your fingerprint and use it on that device.
If they hid in a closet?
It's filled with security holes.
If they hid in a closet and plugged into an Ethernet port and downloaded all the fingerprints?
No, if they walked out, if they walked up behind you and stole your fingerprint off the scanner, it's really pretty trivial.
I think we should all have a shoe phone like Maxwell Smart.
There you go.
Nobody ever gets smart.
No,
this sounds like a game. Star Wars: The Old Republic has a little keychain that you can buy, and instead of creating a password, you have this little keychain, and every time you go to log in, you look at the keychain. It has a series of numbers, and that's your password. And that's how you log in. So it sounds a little bit like that.
They already have that.
I don't think it's anything like that, right, Don? I mean, I know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, same sort of concept, though.
They already have two factors. But basically, what this is, basically Google has been saying over and over that I've seen the last few months, that passwords, like the word password they have is not adequate for our times. Password has been the same for the longest. And they're testing out a series of different projects and pilot programs to find a better way than username and password, because people don't use a good system or use something like CAT or their birthday or something like that. They're trying to find a different way of making your account secure.
The whole point, Michael, the whole point is to make sure it's you. It's physically you there. Yeah. And so if they can use something like a fingerprint or an eyeball or something that is absolutely unique to you, but that does bring up the issue of is this hackable? But I don't think I would care if my retina was out there. If someone hacked and got a picture of my retina, I might care. Maybe if they got my fingerprint.
Well, but Dan, let me put it to you this way: if someone got a picture of your retina, but Dan, I haven't done a but Dan in a while. But Dan, if somebody got a picture of your retina, and your retina was the only way for you to log in to every computer system that you use, and someone now has a picture of it, okay? Not only there's two important things here. One, they can impersonate you. Two, there's no way for you to say, "Hey, wait a minute, don't use my retina anymore because it's been compromised." What are they going to switch to?
Use my retina.
They're going to gouge your eyeballs out?
Oh my God, this is a big business opportunity. That guy, what's the?
Because you only have two. You only have two retinas, right? So after that, then you're screwed.
My retinas are already on file because I see a retinal specialist, and they have a lot of people's retinas on file.
Of all the weird topics we've broached. Okay, so I could see
I just
like
have
the
to say,
commercial
they have
now.
a bunch of them
I could
logged
see
into
for
a computer.
some
All
of
you have
the-
to do is hack that one medical data, but it's not that difficult to get into that one person's medical office, hack that computer. A lot of them are elderly people too. So
Right.
it would be
One of the things we need to realize is that with physical locks, if somebody steals your key, you can change the lock. If somebody steals your retina, they can't. You can't change the retina.
cannot
It's
cha-
a growing
right,
problem
yes.
in America,
Stuck with
retina
these
theft.
We have two. We have a couple of comments that I want to hit quickly. One of them.
Is one of them please move on?
No.
Look,
Joshua said, I suppose the keychain is the place to be for this. In the near future, we'll have keys in one pocket and whatever in the other one. And your wallet is going away. So in the future, you'll have keys in your phone. Their idea is that to log you in, you must have both of those things on you. I think that gets to one of the issues, though, is it says you have to have both of these things on you. But what if somebody else has them?
Why don't they just implant a freaking chip in your skin, and that way that's all you have to do is you just have to be close to your device, and your little dog chip or whatever is gonna log you into Google.
Okay, let me
Then
tell
they
you
steal
how I
your-
hack.
your dog.
I stand right beside. I get something I want you to sign in. I walk right beside you, hug you. Now I got access to something you want.
The problem is ideal security these days is two-factor. It's something you have and something you know. You can think of that in terms of your ATM card. You have your physical ATM card and you know the PIN for that. What this system they're proposing so far is, though, is just one part of that authentication. It's something you have, your keys.
Right. Well, guess what? I went to Bevmo tonight to buy my beer, and I used my ATM card and typed in my PIN, and guess what? The computer freaked out and said I had no money in the bank, even though I just got paid 3 days ago.
You went to
And I
Bevmo?
had like thousands of dollars in the bank.
What's
so they
it
had to
called?
move me-
Bevmo?
It's beverages and more. It's a place.
Is it
where
one of
I
those
get my alcohol.
drive-through things?
No. Anyway,
Can you say
they had
dongle
to
again?
switch me. They had to switch me to another cash register because this one freaked out. Oh yeah, we've been having problems with this all day. So what happens when Google freaks out and and now my PIN number and my card don't work anymore?
I hate to break it to you, but that problem happens far more often than you think. I mean, working in a retail environment, we constantly are having particular banks. It's not our issue. It's the bank's issue, and we constantly are having banks.
How many times? How many times have you guys taken one of these flash drives out without hitting the little, safely remove this device thing, and you screw up the flash drive? It's the same type of thing. Once you give me a dongle or whatever the hell you called it, then you basically doomed me to not having access to what I want because the dongle.
why do we always have these
You need the
words that
Viagra
are
for
so
the dongle.
awkward?
Poor Pam is
A
dongle
dongle.
doomed.
Let's call it something like Fred.
Can we call it
has
time
no
to move?
connotations.
Okay, this
well-
is an.
To summarize, it's a very complicated issue because
Yeah.
if you make it too complex, then you're automatically making it too complex for
Everyone.
You're going to lock some people out. But
Exactly.
if you don't make it too complex, then you're going to let some the hackers in.
We could
So-
talk about this for hours, folks, but sadly, we only have 4 for the show. So let's talk. Oh my God!
To summarize, dongle. Let's move on.
I just coined. By the way, I'm trademarking dongle doomed. Craig Shipp, if he were still here, he'd already have the domain by now.
Is that domain really available? Hang on.
Someone's gonna steal it. The race is on, kids. Okay, so this will be a little mean.
First.
The biggest thing since the whatever concept, clicking 1/3 into a video to get past the dongle story.
Okay, folks, dongledoom.com is available.
There
Hurry
you go.
now.
Let's see if it's available tomorrow. See, I'm generating revenue for GoDaddy. Okay, so Google Fiber is in the news yet again. Very innovative thing in Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri, right? So, first,
Kansas City, Kansas, KC, Kansas, and KC-Mo.
So there are two,
Right.
Alan. There are two parts of the story. One is, why is Google Fiber the country's only super speed internet?
Can I answer that?
And two is that the FCC chairman, I'm not even Gronowski, the unpronounceable FCC chairman.
Just say his first name, Julius.
There you go. He's calling for. He's an optimist. He's calling for gigabit internet in all 50 states by 2015.
Yes, that's what I want to hear.
That's
No.
fantastic. I wish Craig were here to join on this topic. But
Anthony,
what do you
go
guys
ahead.
think? Go ahead, Anthony.
So why is Google Fiber the country's only super speed internet? I'm going to assume for the moment that we're talking about only consumer grade internet speeds.
Yeah.
Does anyone here actually believe that's actually true, that Google is the only super speed internet for consumers? Because I don't believe that. Do you believe that?
If you don't
Well,
believe
it's the
cite
fastest
some-
right now.
Cite somebody else, Anthony.
No, I mean, I think that there are communities, small communities probably, that have super speed internet connectivity. Like, I mean,
I disagree with
it's-
you.
I mean,
Anthony, who else? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying there aren't other communities that don't have gigabit internet, but who are they? I mean, what the article talks about is how Seattle, for example, had it, and the company that had it went bankrupt and stopped offering it, and now they're trying to get somebody else in to do the same thing.
And they're not finding someone.
And there are small communities that had run it in the past, but I don't know what this. A lot of them got shut down.
because I know that those like local governments that have super speed internet connections that are being provided by the local utilities.
Not gigabit.
And I thought that some of those communities that were using it for government uses were also on a small scale providing it to consumers.
Yeah, I
just
don't know.
saw this, headline. So
Craighton, go ahead.
All right. So first off, I'm at a university, and I'm actually on a college research fiber line. So we have like really fast speeds that.
So you have
connects us-
I2.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think the major reason right now that we cannot get faster speeds is because these ISPs have lobbyists that are keeping laws and people on their side to really keep it constrained down. There was a community that did have fiber internet in their small community, and they were able to hook up to a major line. But what happened was that these ISPs found out about that, and they were able to persuade local governments into actually shutting that down. So
Wow.
the biggest issue is the lobbyists.
Craighton,
these
can you explain what an
ISPs.
I2 is?
I2
No.
is basically I2 stands for Internet 2. You have to remember
Okay.
the
Wow.
internet.
That was
the
obvious.
The internet, as you may remember, was founded between a number of different universities and research organizations. And a number of years back, they basically saw that the original internet had been taken over by companies, and they said, hey, why don't we create this second internet to use even higher speeds than are available on the commercial level, tie ourselves more directly together, and create a very, very high-speed research internet using the same internet protocols, just at higher speeds and with a more academic focus. And it's called I2.
Oh,
But
There-
you still have to have transmission, right?
Yes.
So, you only have, whatever transmission you're going to get. Once you leave that campus, you're basically at the mercy of whatever provider gets you there and back, right?
Well, and that's part of the deal with I2 is that it does have higher speed backbones than
But that's-
some of than some of the commercial ones, and it's got a lower usage. So,
do the backbones run between those participating campuses then, Alan?
Yes, that's the point.
That's the way I understood it. Okay.
That's the point, and there are certain service agreements that they have to have in order to be part of I2.
Right.
And within the campus itself, it tries to be higher speed as well, at least to certain points on the campus.
Sure.
Craighton, could you shoot me a link? We'd like to add that, and I'd like to read that about a situation where lobbyists convinced, a utility to shut down an efficient.
Yeah, I'd have to go find it again. It was months ago, but there was I think it was like, I want to say Virginia, somewhere in the eastern side of the United States. It was like the small little community. They hooked up to a local data center. They ran fiber out to their little neighborhood, and everybody was hooked up to it. They all paid, pitched in, and then I think it was like Cox or Time Warner, whatever their name is now, actually came into the local government, and I guess they got like a law passed there or something, or I can't remember what happened, but they were forced to shut it down.
It sounds similar to like what Uber goes through trying to introduce innovation in cab and car companies and the local groups that are, donating to the politicians can, convince them to shut.
We had this comment that I wanted to. We had this comment that I wanted to bring in quickly before we move on. From Sreek, when Alan says, Anthony, I'm not saying you're wrong, I think he's saying you're completely wrong. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm saying that I'm not saying he's wrong. What I'm asking him to do, though, is to provide a little bit more information, and that's fine. And I think he's made points that there may be these communities, there may be situations, and I think he's got a valid point. That's where I'm going with that.
What disappoints me is that companies like Verizon have pretty much just gone, said we're not going to pursue any of this because we can get a crap load of money out of our customers without it, and so we're not going to invest any money in fiber optics or anything like that. We're going to just stick with ganking the customer to get gigabytes. And
because there is no competition.
Wireless.
The fact of the matter is, too,
internet.
They're in collusion with each other. There's plenty of competition. They're in collusion with each other because they're all making money hand over fist. Do you know I pay Verizon $400 a month?
For what?
That's crazy.
The fact of the matter is, a lot of that fiber backbone that can sustain those really high speeds have already been laid. They're already available to us.
I have FiOS.
They just need, they just need to run it to the houses, and
that's the most expensive part, Craighton.
Exactly,
and that's exactly what this article says.
It's the same reason we didn't get telephone distributed throughout the whole country until the federal government subsidized it to put the last mile in place everywhere in the country.
And that's why it's largely a monopoly. I mean, not an official one. I mean, because it just doesn't make economic sense for Verizon and Comcast and U.S. Cable, whatever, blah blah blah.
Well,
all run that expensive line there and only get 25-30% of market share.
Well,
the other thing to point out is that Verizon has largely backed off of a lot of its wired lines, including FiOS. Yes, they've stopped their FiOS deployments. They're not really doing a lot of wired line deployments anymore. They're increasingly they're increasingly betting on wireless.
Right.
Pam, can you explain how you have a $400 Verizon bill?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. So I have FiOS, right? So I pay for, I pay about $80 a month for internet because I get the medium speed. I also have cable through Verizon.
What do you get up and down speed-wise with your $80?
Oh, I wish I had that.
Speedtest.net right now. Speedtest.net.
I'm actually wireless right now, so I can't.
Okay, so
because
$80 for
I'm
that.
in the casita, so I'm separate. But I will have that information for you later.
Pixar, it didn't happen.
Shut up.
Oh, that's no problem with Pam. That's no problem with Pam.
That's right. There's no problem with Pam. You're right.
All right, so go ahead, Pam. $80 for the internet,
right.
mid-level.
And then 5 of us have smartphones. So my husband, myself, 2 kids and my sister all have smartphones, and then my sister decided to use some bonus money to buy my daughter and herself iPads with a phone number. So I have an extra $30 a month data on those as well. So our Verizon bill is $496.53 a month.
I hope someone from Verizon is watching this program tonight, so they can write you a thank you letter.
Yeah,
They should.
Wow.
That's amazing.
You should get Christmas cards from Verizon.
That's what I'm saying.
You would think.
Man, turn around and grab your ankles. Here they come.
That's exactly. Thank goodness I got lots of lube.
Oh.
Any thought on the? Okay, to close the question, Alan, is there a chance that? Is it at all realistic that we're going to have gigabit in 50 states in 2 years? I mean, that's
sure.
How?
Sure, I think it's by defining what you mean by in 50 states. I mean, I think every state has a capital in it, and I think that capital, tends to get, rather wealthy lobbyists who like to hang around the capital, and I think you're going to see very, very small gigabit deployments in
high-end
the capital city.
townhome complexes, where it's like 7 feet apart. Yeah.
Yeah,
the guy on the hill and with the great view, he's screwed.
Right. And that's another thing too. Once the even Google's probably having problems in Kansas City. Once you get so many users on a particular line, the speeds go down, and there's nothing you can do to change that.
Except for the fact that fiber is at least a little bit better able to handle that kind of load. It's got more bandwidth up front.
Oh yeah.
So, right, but I do notice that even when I'm plugged straight into the router, that there are certain times and days of the week where I get a little slower response. Fridays.
Right. And the biggest reason for that tends to be because your ISP at the head end, at the other side of the fiber, somewhere they need to connect to the internet, and that connection may be congested.
There's a prime time, everyone's on.
And that's why some of the things that we want to see where Google is going with their fiber is how much of that data is going to end up being located in Kansas City versus being located outside of Kansas City, so you need to actually travel the rest of the internet.
So fiber optics, I didn't know that. Fiber optics can be bottlenecked? I didn't...
They have to connect to a non-fiber optic connection somewhere. It's not fiber optics all the way there and back. There is a point where it goes to a standard connection.
Right, I understand.
That's where the bottleneck happens.
So somewhere you're going to hand off to the rest of the...
So pretending theoretically, though, that everything is fiber, is there a bottleneck to it?
Yes.
If everything was fiber,
yes.
Eventually.
Let's look at it this way, Anthony. I'm going to pull a very, very hypothetical number out of thin air. Okay. Let us assume that a fiber line can handle 100 gigabit connections. Okay. Now, all 100 of the beauty of the internet, what the internet taught us was that those 100 connections are not going to be happening at the same time. So basically, 100 people aren't going to need to cram down that channel at once. You're going to get 1,000 people, and everyone only needs a tenth of that. And every tenth of a second, you can trade off with somebody else. The problem is that still only means you're supporting 1,000 people. And at some point, if your pipe isn't big enough, somewhere heading out onto the global internet, you're going to get congested. So, yes, fiber does it much, much better, and the backbones are fiber. But at some point, you're going to run out of capacity on your backbones. That's the problem. That's the concern, and that actually gets to a story that we had covered. Oh, actually, that gets to the next story in some ways, where French telecom Orange claims that it's made a deal with Google to pay for some of those costs because it's mostly Google's traffic on their backbone, and they're saying, hey, Google, this is all your stuff is going to our users. You need to be paying for some of it. And up until now, Google's been saying, no, that's your problem, not ours.
As they should be telling that's net neutrality at its core.
Exactly.
Right. And that's why people are a little bit concerned that Orange is now saying, "Hey, we got Google to pay us money." Nah, 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 nah. So that's an interesting article, and it's going to see Google hasn't confirmed, Orange hasn't made any other public statement besides this one. So it's going to be interesting to see how that actually shakes out. And when I say shakes out, I mean, shakes down.
This next story, I cannot wait.
Another innuendo.
I cannot wait for the next story.
Oh, and we know why. I think this next story is a dangerous one.
I added this one.
Oh my God!
This is about the donkey death.
Yeah, in fact, yeah. Every week we try to include a donkey death story in Google Plus Week. Go ahead, Monica. Do enlighten us about this.
Okay, so Google says they are innocent in the presumed donkey death in Botswana. And I think that this is true because we have photographic evidence that the donkey was alive. The donkey was just taking a little nap in the road while the Street View car was, I think it was the car. Yeah, it's the Street View car that was
approaching.
Going through Botswana. It was, it saw the donkey taking a dust
Obviously, having
bath.
mapped the entire rest of the world, they were in Botswana.
Yeah.
You have to explain the background a little bit. Somebody was going through Google Maps in Botswana, and they noticed there was this picture of in the direction they were looking at it. They saw a donkey standing up. In the next frame, they saw the donkey lying down, and they said
in the middle of the road.
In the middle of the road, and they said, "Look." Oh, and then in the next frame after that, the Google car is pulled further away, and the donkey is still lying in the middle of the road. And they said, "Google killed this donkey." And,
right. What an ass.
Google and
oh God, I was waiting.
Oh, God.
I thought Pam would hit it first.
Maybe
it's like they're setting up that game. Remember the website? It was real controversial where you could hunt online. Like they'd have like animals and a real gun, and you could like have your little joystick on the website, and you could like hunt and kill the animals, and then they would like, freeze them and send them to you, or some crazy thing. Maybe that's what they're doing.
We've talked about global warming. You really want to talk about guns tonight, Dan, too, while we're at? Okay. Anyway, so Google had basically
long
Google
distance game hunting. Yeah, that's what you want to talk about, right?
But the donkey is still alive.
Google has said the donkey is still alive. What happened is that the way the cars record things, you can view them in either order. And the way people were viewing it to make it look like the donkey died is essentially backwards of how the car actually drove down that street.
Oh.
So if you view it in the order that they took the photos, you see a donkey lying in the street, and then the donkey wakes up. If you
I've got
view
an
it
idea
backwards,
for a new game. Let's call it Dongle Kong.
No, DonkeyGate.
Dongle Kong.
Google DonkeyGate.
click on Craighton. We can see the picture of the donkey.
Okay.
Lying in the
Let's
street.
go to Craighton. By all means, we're going to go to Craighton here.
Because this is journalism at its finest, Dan.
Absolutely. All right, so it was like sleeping before the car got there.
Right.
My God, I have not seen this. This
And
is
then
hilarious.
And then in the rear view camera, we see the donkey standing up, looking at it, going, "Why the hell did you wake me up from my nap?"
Exactly. I was comfortable nesting or sleeping right in the middle of the road.
And then if you check out the next picture, the donkey is suing for rights to its photo.
I wonder if Google has gone back and blurred out the donkky in Google
Who sleeps in the middle of the road?
Donkeys?
Well, if you can see, look, it's a dirt road. It's like
it's probably just taking a dust bath.
Yeah.
Right?
There hasn't been a car in that road in
parasites,
6 weeks, Dan.
Yeah.
Exactly what websites are you on, Monica, to find these hidden gems?
I have a lot of spare time, folks.
The dark side of Google.com.
I know that this is pathetic, but I'm more curious about how awful the editing of the car is. They're not removing the car like they usually do.
It's a nice quality picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's good. The donkey looks great.
He did look great.
We should. I wish I'd known about this story. I would have teased it at the very beginning.
Yeah,
Coming
this is a
up,
good one.
epic scandal involving Google streetcar allegedly killing a donkey. We'll have details, but first, let's talk about
Dongles.
Quick streams.
Okay, have we exhausted the donkey?
Donkeys, dongles, and death. More to come.
More of the,
Have we
and
loped?
since we're in the longest running show on Earth,
Have we,
more at 11.
all right, I think we have loped the mule, so we can move on. And the 6 people who understand that expression are laughing right now. Okay. I can't even begin to introduce this. Alan, or Michael Banks, I guess.
Yeah, this was a story that Michael Banks brought to my attention, so I'm going to toss it over to him. Basically, Google, for those of you who aren't aware of what Google Drive is in the first place, we've talked about it a lot in terms of the Google Docs on steroids. One of the really neat things about Google Docs is the collaboration system part of it, so that multiple people can be typing over each other. I mean, typing at the same time, and working on a document at the same time. And one of the things they introduced in I/O, or they announced at I/O rather, was that they would be able to bring this capability to anybody who wanted to extend Google Drive. Do you want to talk about it further, Michael Banks?
Yeah.
What if you don't want people to do it? Can you stop them from doing it too? Because that just sounds like horrible mess.
Well, then you make the document read only.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michael.
Or private, so they won't even be able to see it. But basically, what I saw today was a video that the Google developers did with Drive, talking about different apps that use Google Drive's APIs in it. And what I noticed in my stream later is that they scheduled an event that they're going to announce an early access program for certain people to access new things that they're going to release to the new version of the API.
So this, the early access is a big thing with Google these days. Have they indicated exactly who's going to be how to get access to the API? Or sorry, the SDK early?
They have not. They just said participants. So I'm definitely going to be tuning in. I think in the future, one of my guesses with Google Drive is that a facet that we're going to talk about next, Google Glass, I think they have to have some kind of content storage system that everything you use Glass for goes to. And I think Google Drive, I think this API is going to enable some different things that Google Glass will tap into.
Okay, so let's use that as the transition right into the next document. So you think that the critical backbone behind Glass is going to be Drive. Michael,
somewhere.
Mike Ellis, you added this next topic, so I'm going to let you introduce it.
Okay, I gotta go back and refresh myself here. Help me. Here we go. So Google Glass. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot what it was about. Right, Google Glass is going to be available to developers this month. Which I'm not a developer, but I find this Google Glass thing to be hugely exciting. I love this technology, and I'm interested that they're opening it up, and now you're beginning. We talked, I think, last week or week before about someone. Alan, was it you? I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Jeff that saw someone on the street in San Francisco wearing one, and he didn't have the what are the right words, Pam? The guts to ask to go up and approach the person. But I find that really exciting. Now the developers are going to have a chance to get their hands on this. And I love what Google has done, but I get really excited when I see what all the creative forces in the country and the world do when they have the chance to unpack the box and start figuring out new creative ways to use it.
Now, just for the one audience member who might have no idea what Google Glass is.
They're not on the panel, though.
Google Glass is a project out of one of their shoot the moon projects, basically, where they're looking to create a wearable, almost a heads-up display, something that'll hover right outside your peripheral vision, worn like a pair of eyeglasses almost, and that's it'll have a camera, it'll have a display, it'll have some sort of input, but that's about all we know about it really. We've seen people demoing them. We saw them being worn by Diane von Furstenberg's models during last Fashion Week. We saw 4 skydivers jump out of a blimp and land on the roof of the Moscone Center, showing the entire fall through a pair of Google Glass. That was back at I/O in June.
Yep.
And at that presentation was when Sergey announced what they were calling the Glass Explorers program. And that was to get a bunch of developers very early access to essentially almost the first product run of these. And
Alan, does anyone know, does anyone in the panel know, or if anyone out there in the audience, do you know who's making these for YouTube or for Google? They don't manufacture things themselves. They license the. They license someone.
They might, because like at I/O, well, I wasn't there, but I mean, watching the video, they show that different. You know, it started a while ago. I think it's probably one of those R&D labs or something that just promoted to the next level. I don't.
Yeah, but now we're moving. I mean, now we're moving to distributing it out to quite a fairly large number of people. This is manufactured now.
But a lot of Nexus Q was manufactured by Google. I think they might be going back trying to manufacture their own things. They might be getting some of the parts out, you know, from other people.
Michael, you say a fairly large number. We know there are only about 2,500 developers who are part of the Explorer program.
Right, but 2,500 is a lot of units to make for prototyping.
Well,
people that do engineering are not good at making 2,500 reproducible, exactly identical units.
That's but it's also not mass. But it's also not mass production levels.
Okay,
Anthony, what do you? Anthony.
Did Google produce the CR48s in the same way that we're talking about? Because that was what it was 60. It was supposed to be around 60,000 units that were produced.
I don't think they made those, so did they, Anthony? I think.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
I thought the CR48s were made by one of their.
I thought it was made by Acer, but.
I didn't think it was Acer. I thought it was somebody else, but I thought it was Samsung.
It was unbranded. I thought it was Samsung too, but it was unbranded, so who knows?
Okay.
No, but to answer your question, I don't know who's actually making it, but they've been really, really hush-hush about this entire project.
I bet it'd be unbranded. I think it's going to be unbranded.
Well, I think it'll be unbranded too. I think the question is that doesn't answer the question of who's actually putting it together, though.
Right.
I mean, we know that the Q, for example, was a Google-branded product, and they contracted with a domestic manufacturing.
So does anyone else get revved up about the fact that now this is in the hands of 25 hugely creative people that all they do is sit in their garages and write code for things that are new and different? This really excites me.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
Michael,
no, I'm thrilled about this. I'm not joking. I think this is great.
Michael, let me
absolutely not interested at all. I could care less.
Michael, let me put it this way.
Wow.
To tell you just how excited I am about it, if I'm very, very lucky, and I hope I am, I'm not sure I'll be on the show in 2 weeks.
Now that's a tease. That's a tease.
That's a tease. Ooh.
If I'm very, very lucky, and I'm very, very hopeful.
Alan is my new best friend.
The one thing the problem, though, Alan, if you're in a hangout, it's only it's the equivalent of your back camera, so they can't see you. So it's only good for. It'd be great for like a Syrian demonstrator, you know what I mean, or something.
Well, if we're looking at it in terms of a wearable video camera, no, it means that you won't be able to see the reporter. But looking at me, that's really not a bad thing.
I'm just trying to imagine some dude walking down the street with holding his phone in front of his head because he's joined the hangout twice. So like, hey, what's up, guys? And he's like got some Borg thing going on. It's just crazy. Well, and the first time a kid shows up at school with one of these, there's going to be a whole. I hope they really define and explain well. It's going to be really interesting to watch this.
Well,
this is a new thing.
I think that's what they were trying to do with Diane von Furstenberg with the DVF fashion show was trying to make that mainstream and try to make it trendy, just like iPhones and the white the white earbuds were trendy.
Well, I thought it was sexy.
But I think also you'll remember during, I believe, some riots that were taking place in Canada a year ago, Sarah Hill was talking to somebody who was doing a hangout from there, and the way he was doing his hangout was through a heavy video camera, which was connected to the laptop in his backpack, and he was streaming the hangout live from there. And here's Google Glass trying to do the same thing in something that I'm wearing on my eyeglasses.
Right.
Well, and there are tons and tons of, even non-news related implications for this sort of thing. For example, my fiance is he's writing a field guide to bird sounds, and if the audio that you can record, while wearing this is good enough, you can take them just wearing this into the field and might be able to get good quality audio and video for the birds that he is looking at and recording and get the sounds for them.
Monica, one of the things I remember from way back was an interview that you and Dan and a bunch of other Hangout innovators were doing with I am totally blanking on Elgin's name, Mike Elgin.
Early on, yeah.
Very, very early on. This is a long time ago. And he was talking to you specifically, Monica, about what you were doing with your dramatic readings. And he said, can you imagine people wearing a camera on their chest and doing dramatic shows that way, doing stage productions that way? And ever since that, and ever since I saw Glass, that was my first thought, is I want to get 5 people together, all of them wearing Glass, all of them in a hangout doing Shakespeare.
Right. Well, we've done Shakespeare before in a hangout.
You've done Shakespeare, and I want to do that with Glass.
Yeah. I mean, our biggest, we stopped after doing Act 1 of The Tempest because it's so action based that we, when we're stuck in tiny boxes, we can't do the action. But we all had Google Glass, and we all had the money for Google Glass. Maybe that would change, but we'll see. Maybe if the price comes down enough.
We don't
I
know
think
what
it
the
will.
price is.
We were actually debating that, right, Alan? What we think the price for the consumer just to clarify, is that what you meant? Like once it launches, like in Best Buy, what price you were looking at? We were trying to figure out what's the price point going to be for this product.
And what about people like me who wear glasses?
Yeah,
they've fixed that already, right? They've attached this thing to existing spectacles.
So I couldn't see this possibly being any more expensive than $600, and the reason that
I think it's going to be way less than that. I think it's going to be about 200, two to three, because otherwise it's going to be. Look, they just okay. You got to put this in perspective. They just went through the Q, which was a barely adopted device that had issues.
Dan, I'll say you have to put this in perspective. This is an iPhone killer. They want this to be as trendy and as cool and as hip and as desirable as an iPhone.
They want it in their hands. If they could produce a $30 Android Nexus 7, they would, but they can't. But I think they're going to push this down. And I think it's going to be one big question we were debating, and we shouldn't spend too much longer on this because I know everyone wants to talk about Facebook. But is it going to be a dumb device or self-contained? In other words, is it going to be like a Bluetooth thing that is reliant and only works if you have an accompanying phone or some sort of mobile device?
It doesn't
or is
matter.
it going to be self-contained? It matters because of the weight. How much weight do you want on your because we all wear glasses, so I'm not wearing them now, but if it was totally like able to have 3G and Wi-Fi, and if these guys are walking down the street, then it's got to have 3G or 4G connectivity or whatever.
But you got to remember that the biggest reason that a phone is heavy is because of the display and all the glass on it.
True, and you've got a natural place to put an antenna, right?
So,
with the thing.
But you're right. The rate would be a massive issue.
The cost would be a lot simple. I'm speculating here. I'm no engineer, but for one thing, you could do with the glasses, you could have a diversity antenna, which means that you have 2 antennas, and whichever one is picking up the best signal is active, and the other one isn't. And then I'm sure all the fluoride people are going to talk about brain cancer because the freaking thing's on your. So, but I'm wondering if it's going to be. Here's my question, Monica. Do you think this will be a self-contained thing, that does all the fancy stuff and can by itself with no other device dependent, connect to Wi-Fi or a mobile network? Or do you think it's going to be more like a Bluetooth thing, but much fancier, that is reliant on your phone, connecting to it, and actually the phone is the one transmitting stuff? What do you think?
I don't know, but I can foresee a legal issue.
Maybe in a gym, perhaps, depending on how obscure these get.
I foresee a legal issue with cars, because if it's not like if you wear glasses and you have the option to have it attached to your glass, but say like if I had one and I attached it to my glass and it's not easily detachable, and many people are getting into cars and driving, there's going to be this issue with the whole driving and texting and the distraction issue.
Monica, I think it's a good point, and it's one that Eric Rice, who's been on this panel in the past, has talked a lot about. And I suggest you go read some of his stuff on Heads Up Display.
Is he even on Google Plus anymore?
He still is on Google Plus. He's got some truly amazing posts that are even more venomous at Google than some of my comments are.
So I'm not saying at all that.
No, let me finish. Part of what Google has done, part of the design of Glass, is to put that display as far out of your primary vision as possible, specifically to address those issues. And it's a lot of what their work really is focused on. I mean, people talk about, is this a heads-up display? Is this going to be occupying your primary field of vision? No, it's not. And it's very, very carefully designed to be fairly far out in your peripheral vision. And that has a lot of usability and user interface implications to it.
But you still shouldn't be distracted while you're driving a car. Sorry.
Use the phone.
Pam, let me.
No,
Pam, let me,
but I don't think that hands-free should be used. Wait till you get home, then answer your freaking phone. You don't need to be talking on the phone.
Pam, I agree with you, and you've got a perfectly valid point. So, would you suggest getting rid of the speedometer?
No, I would suggest getting rid of any kind of interaction with other human beings while you're driving the car.
So is it?
So put
yourself in a box.
Do you allow Pam?
Even the dog disagrees.
Pam, do you allow your kids to talk to you while you're driving?
That is impossible.
No, actually, I don't.
Really? Like no one's allowed to have a conversation while you're driving?
Absolutely not. No
one's allowed to listen to the CD player and the radio.
Well, that's completely insane, Pam.
Unfortunately, the radio is on. That is the one distraction.
But that's a distraction.
If you have
Pam,
do you ever change the channel of the radio station while you're driving, Pam, or do you pull over to a rest stop before switching?
No, I just bear with it.
Before you switch from your country to your western station, do you?
Yeah, I think driving is one of the most dangerous things that we do, and we take it for so much granted. I've seen people driving while shaving and reading and all this other stuff, and I really, really think that we should really crack down because
I've seen your post, Pam, and I don't think it's the most dangerous thing you do.
Yeah, and I've been in 2 accidents in the last year. Not my fault. I was rear-ended both times. So.
No, and I think it's a valid point that we need to, we need fewer distractions, not more distractions. And I think in the same way that we have car dashboards that are designed to give us the important information that we need to use while driving in our peripheral vision, that's where Glass is trying to go. And I think applications that respect this and try to work with it as opposed to trying to grab your attention are going to be the important and the significant apps that will come out of this for car driving type things.
Do you think that Google will control the ecosystem? Like, I don't want to say like Apple, but to make sure that only those kind of apps are available on Glass?
It'll probably be hackable.
That's a good question.
Have we answered my question though, guys? Is there a consensus here? Is it going to be a standalone device, or is it going to be similar to a Bluetooth thing that will communicate with your phone, and the phone is actually the transmitter receiver?
I think both. I think it'll have.
That's an easy
I
answer.
imagine it Google Now, looking through your eyes. I mean, it'll have information that you can use it as a standalone device, but I think it will feed or communicate. It definitely has to have the communication piece with your Android phone.
Man, I think it makes so much more sense to have like a Bluetooth connectivity thing in there. All you have to have on there is the ability to get to a nearby mobile device. You're going to have a camera and a display and other stuff, and basically they're just going to send new apps, your Google Glass app for Android or iOS or whatever, to your phone, and that's where I think this is going to be I want to say dumb device, but that's not fair. But you understand what I'm saying? It's going to be the
I think that's farther down the line. I think what you're imagining is a little farther down the line. I don't think it have enough robust or even experience to it to be an entire OS or a phone.
Well, yeah, I don't see.
I think it's going to be like I think it's going to be a Bluetooth thing that has a camera and a monitor attached in its simplest explanation, and it's going to rely on the phone and the Android app on the phone to actually operate and control it. I don't think it's going to be a standalone device that will be able to do Wi-Fi and 3G without that.
Mm-hmm. Sort of not to that extent. I think,
guys, I'm just going to put my personal opinion here. Based on the evidence that has been presented publicly, I disagree.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me. So let's talk.
You disagree with what?
I disagree with the fact that it's going to require tethering to a phone.
So he's saying it's going to be a standalone device. So that's cool.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
No, I think it will be standalone to the extent.
Where's the wiggle room?
You can use it to work with the device.
Is it going to have 3G on it? Or a connection?
No.
Is it another $60 I got to pay to Verizon?
All right, so we've exhausted that topic. I want to say one quick thing, and then you guys can beat each other up over this. This is like Swartz, where I want to put my 2 cents in and then roll out for a moment. Okay.
Actually, do we have time for one more topic? I just saw this roll by.
Absolutely, go ahead. Yeah, just add it to the thing real quick, or just verbally introduce it afterward. But okay, so let me talk about Michael Banks. Ready? Facebook. They introduced the Facebook graph, and I want to tell my thoughts on it, and then everyone else can talk, starting with Alan and down the road. Basically, it's searching within Facebook. It's like a search engine. I would say like Google, but no, it's more like Bing. But it's within Google stuff. So you can search for photos. It's kind of an innovative text-based search, like sort of an Ask Jeeves, and I think that it's all about dating. I think it is more of a threat to Match.com than Google. I think it's about, because in the past, like with MySpace, you could find like I'm doing a people search. I'm looking at Front Royal or in San Francisco. I'm looking for women aged this to age this who are single, and then you get a populated list, and then you could communicate with them, right? So there's that.
Dan,
and then the second.
Let me pass this one on. This one was actually from a friend of mine inside Facebook. He cited this as a good example of how the new search will work. Women will be able to search for pictures of my husband with single women who are not my friends.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's interesting. Yeah.
They should be searching for pictures of their husband with people that are their friends.
I think the biggest use case is going to be
or vice versa.
Basically, people trying to, hook up. And the second thing is, it is no coincidence that very recently they introduced this thing where you could pay money to communicate with someone who was not in your friends list. And if it's a celebrity, it's $100. If it's Joe Sixpack, it's $1. I think that is connected to this because it's a discovery engine. It's a lot of other things as well, but I think the big use case is going to be people trying to get laid, basically. I think that's how this is actually going to be used. So you guys, Alan, you want to intro and
with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pam for her reactions. I want to go last on this, and I'll tell you why when I get last. So Pam, you have any thoughts on this?
I think that, it's like, what's that show on TV, Cheaters? Like Cheaters for Facebook or whatever. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And, paying money to send something to someone's inbox who's not on your friends list or whatever, I find that sleazy, absolutely sleazy.
Okay, Sreek, let me get your opinions on the new Facebook search.
I don't think people are going to really use Facebook to do any meaningful search. When I say meaningful search, if I'm looking for a particular article, which I know was there in Wall Street Journal a couple of years back, I don't think Facebook is the right place, regardless of how good the search is. And I know that Bing, if you search something and it goes to Bing and all this thing, well, how many people, look at Europe, 90% of the people use Google, as opposed to 70%. I mean, in Europe, 90% of the people use Google as opposed to whatever. In the US, I think the search market for Google is 70%. I don't think Google is going to be affected in terms of real search. I'm not going to go and look in Facebook and look for a doctor or a restaurant nearby, which my friends have suggested. No. I think a lot of people are going to use it who are already on Facebook for a long time every day. But in reality, to become a threat to Google in the search area, it's a long way for Facebook to go.
Okay, Mike Ellis. I'm going down the row. Mike Ellis, your thoughts. We'll get to you, Monica. Don't worry.
Oh, good.
I honestly don't know very much about what it's going to do that's any different than Facebook search now. I think Facebook search sucks.
Well, I think that's the big thing, is that it's not going to suck. The big difference is that it's going to understand relationships and understand more about what you're telling it. So you'll be able to do searches along the lines of, show me my friends who went to University of Southern California. Show me my friends who went to University of Southern California who like Star Wars. Show me my friends who like Star Wars but hate Star Trek.
So
show me pictures of California taken by my friends who went to school in Southern California. Those sorts of queries.
Wow, I find that to be really an arcane use of search. And if you're going to use, if the population that's visible to you is your circle, sorry, I almost said the wrong word, your sphere of friends, your group of people you already know, and from that you're going to ask yourself, I want to see the pictures. I don't know that my friend went to California, but I'd like to see all of my friends who have ever been to California and took a picture in San Jose.
How about this one? Friends or friends of friends who have visited Paris and who have taken pictures of the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Okay, so that could make more sense. The friends of friends part makes it extend quite a bit farther, which is good.
Or even if you say, show me pictures of Notre Dame Cathedral, and it sorts it by order of pictures that were highly rated and people who were closest to me in terms of in my friend network.
Right.
Okay, Michael Banks.
Okay. First off, I hate the way it looks. I hate the way it works.
So you're saying that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread?
Well, okay. First off, I don't like the way it looks. The icons look terrible. I don't like the way you have to press tab does one thing to select, and pressing is another thing to select. The UI, the way you use it, by far is unintuitive to me. Now, as far as the information of things, friends of friends and stuff like that, it's great they're using the information, that brings back the likes and when you fill out stuff and when you put your interest and all that. I think it's going to a part to what Dan said, dating. Yeah, I think it fits that, but I think what they're going towards is interest. What Google Plus does great. I think it's the way to bite back at it not being interest-based. You could say it's a counter to communities, but not so really, because it's not, they've already done groups and all this other stuff. But I think it's a way to use the information they have in different ways to get users to find people that are interested and do the same things they do. But I still dislike the way it works, the way it looks, and I don't like it.
Alan,
So,
let
Michael,
me expand on his comment before we go to Michael Ellis real quick.
No, we're going the other direction.
Okay, either way, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, expand on your comment.
Yeah, on the dating thing, here's the deal. I got a friend, a single guy, and he gets on Facebook, and he's trying to meet girls, right? So he gets on there and he adds a bunch of random girls, friends of friends, or just does search, tries to go through their arcane search. And I said in the private chat here that I think, and it's true, I think MySpace had better searches for that in 2004 than Facebook does today.
Disagree.
Well, okay, we can disagree. But now you'll be able to look for, whatever gender you want, single, interested in this, from this age to this age in a geographic area, and you'll be able to pay to communicate with them, to get out of their very obscure other thing. I think this is all tied together. I think this is a bigger threat to Match.com and other similar sites than it is to Google. But I don't think that's necessarily the only reason they did it at all.
I think the other way around.
I think that's going to be the biggest usage for it. I think guys trying to get laid are going to use it.
I think they made something to now it happened to work with dating.
I think it shows they're desperate for revenue.
That always is everything.
Okay, elaborate, Monica. Where's the revenue angle on this?
Quite honestly,
I can tell you.
Okay, Michael, where's the revenue angle?
They're desperate for revenue. Well, first of all, why the scaling of price points for celebrities if it's not about revenue?
Well, that's the messaging aspect. I want to focus on search.
And if it's not originally, if people said if it's about keeping spam out. Well, if it's about keeping spam out, then you could set a 99-cent charge, and that would discourage spammers.
They do, but not for Justin Bieber or Mark Zuckerberg. That was their official explanation. Alan, do you doubt that the charge to communicate with someone who's not a friend of a friend or a friend, do you doubt that charge thing is tied to what's going to happen after they launch a search?
I don't entirely see the relevancy. I guess I do in some ways, but
through search and Facebook.
I think they're disconnected thoughts, to be honest.
I think they're very connected thoughts because you're gonna. Search is discovery, and you're gonna be able to discover anybody who posts publicly. If I post publicly about I love my Note 2, and some guy in Botswana, in between killing donkeys, does a search. I want to find people who have talked about donkeys dying and has a Note 2. Oh, I found Dan McDermott, and I'm not a friend of his. If he wants to communicate with me and get it in my inbox instead of this stupid ass settable to not do that other box folder, whatever you want to call it, they got to pay $1. And so I think they're connected. I totally think this is about dating.
Number one,
you got to find people, and then you got to pay to access them, and that's the new revenue model.
Number one, this assumes that they have intelligent search, which I don't feel that they have.
Ooh.
Number two,
Facebook?
It assumes that Facebook has intelligent search, which I've never seen them demonstrate. It assumes that they have.
Hang on. What do you mean by intelligent search in this case?
I have never seen Facebook demonstrate the same types of intelligent search that Google has demonstrated, and I have never seen them demonstrate the type of respect that Google has had for its users, the same type of privacy rights that they have given. And if you see in the article that that comes from Wired,
right, one of the articles we have points out that during the announcement they emphasized time and time again, we're respecting your privacy. This is only going to give you information that you've permitted. We're making sure that people tighten up their privacy settings, and then the very next day they've got a massive privacy leak.
But you can opt out of it. What a shock!
Yeah, I mean, let's remember they're under an agreement to have a privacy auditor come in periodically as well. I want to skip back and while we're there, we had this quote, "This is all assuming that people reveal everything about their lives on Facebook." Is that how people use it? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yes, it is how they use it.
I think it's atrocious and abysmal, but yes, it's how people use it.
Right.
And I'll be honest, this is why I came to Google, because straight off the bat they said, we're going to be respecting your privacy. And then they didn't, but that's another story.
But most people respected the notion that privacy was valid and valuable, so they didn't post everything about what was happening in their world.
But Monica, I want to skip back to I want to skip back to the first half of what you were saying.
Before we skip back, though, because this is very pertinent. Like, we have a week here in which we've been talking about Aaron Swartz, a man whose life ended because of, this horrible, tragic case in which
his life ended because he had a mental illness and he couldn't deal with it. Don't blame it on the government.
What we are going to have is more and more cases like this, where people share things inadvertently. I have seen many people who have had automatic upload turned on their phone and not known. I've seen a man who uploaded his bank statement to his public photos on Google Plus because he had automatic upload, and he uploaded naked pictures of his girlfriend, and until we flagged them, he had it set automatic upload.
Why blame Google for that?
More and more cases like this in the future.
Google for that?
I am not blaming Google. I'm saying that this is going to become a future issue in our society, and that we are going to have to face this down the road because we live in a society in which everything is.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around how someone had automatic upload enabled, but the photos are uploaded privately.
He had automatic upload and was uploading most of his photos public. He forgot. He took a bunch of photos.
It's not possible.
And it happened. I'm not going to direct you to this person's profile because I don't even know if he's taken them down. He's anyway. My point is that we live in a world where things that used to be private are now becoming more increasingly public, and with Google Glass, this will be a much more of a public world.
That's a different asset. Things like that happen because we don't read and we don't use things the way they're supposed to.
But what we were looking at.
No, Michael. No, Monica. I'm agreeing with you on this one. So let me finish. Michael, I think you're missing part of the point, though, and it's not so much that we don't read; it's that we have a set of expectations when we use something.
It's still our responsibility to make sure that those expectations are or are not met. It is not the company's responsibility.
I partly disagree with you, Pam. One of the fundamental principles of user interface design is the principle of least surprise. You do something that the way you design your user interfaces isn't so that your hard disk is reformatted just because you decide to open a program. When you do something, you are expecting certain things to happen, and the person who makes that program should understand what people expect, not impose upon you what you want it to do.
We live in a society.
There's a
one of the issues that we have, though, is that we have such rapid innovation and evolution of technology that our laws cannot keep pace with what was current in 1984. Yep. So laws that were current in 1984 were being applied to this man today, and we had a prosecutor that she was going to apply every single charge that she could, resulting in the 35-year prison term.
About this story.
Okay.
But my point is it's not this story. This story is just an example of how this rapid evolution of technology. You could look at the evolution of technology in the past 6 years and say, wow, it's evolved so much in the past 6 years that laws just 6 years ago might not keep pace with what's evolved.
I want to bring us back on, and I want to get Anthony's opinion before I give mine. Anthony, what's your opinion of Facebook search?
I don't have an opinion because I haven't used it, so I I mean, I'm not going to do what a lot of these other people have done, and I haven't used it, so I
can always count on you, Anthony, for a wonderful perspective there. I really appreciate that. Okay, my perspective on Facebook search, I watched the rollout. There were a lot of things that concerned me about Facebook's application of privacy. There were a lot of things that made me look at it and go, just how many people on a regular basis are going to want to throw a movie party and decide to do some Facebook search about your friends? And then it dawned on me that everybody was missing the long game of what Facebook is doing here. One of the things they were demonstrating, one of the things they said is, show me my favorite photos. Show me photos that I have liked. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the requests that I heard back on day one of Google Plus is, how do I see which posts in Google Plus I've +1'd? How do I see which pictures I've +1'd? You can't do that in Google Plus. Facebook is going to be delivering that right off the bat. 1. 2.
Can they?
Can Facebook?
Have you seen a demonstration that this can actually come to pass?
Yes, that was part of their demonstration. That is something that is live when in the beta that's rolling out now. Now, we have to emphasize, Facebook search is in a very, very early beta. It's in limited accessibility, and it's going to be a long, long time till it all rolls out.
Yeah.
But they are demonstrating a feature right now that Google has not been able to deliver in a year and a half.
And I will believe it when I see it.
How important?
No, let me finish, please, guys. Let me finish, Sreek. Okay. Let me get to point 2. Okay. Last week there's been a lot of talk on Google Plus recently about Google and the long game. In fact, we talked about it a little bit tonight, talking about how Larry was going for the long game. Facebook search is a long game plan for them. What I think they're aiming for is saying, we talk a lot about how Google likes to index the entire web. Facebook has a different approach. They want everybody to put their stuff into Facebook, and then they're going to index it there. So, for example, if you're interested in following Android Week, or following the Wall Street Journal, they want the Wall Street Journal to publish all of their articles inside Facebook. In order for you to read it, they want you to read that article by following the Wall Street Journal. And now they've given you an easy way to say, hey, there was that article that I read 3 weeks ago, and I clicked like because I liked it then, and I remember it was about cats. And now they're giving you a good way to say, what was the article that I liked about cats from, I don't remember which paper it was in, but I know I follow them. That's the long game. Yeah. It's not just about what my friends are doing. And I think Dan is right, by the way. It is about dating. It is about job searches. Yeah, it is about that. Yeah. But the long game is these companies that are going to bring their content into Facebook and give you the way to quickly and easily find your articles there.
Alan,
let me get
how
Sreek.
is this different?
Let me get Sreek first, and then I'll tell you how it's different from Search Plus Your World. Go ahead, Sreek.
Couple of things. How difficult is for Google to actually show all the stuff you have +1 or all the posts you're +1. Hold on. Think about that. I think for Google, it's relatively an easy thing to do.
Then why haven't they done it?
That is a different question. But I think it's a really easy thing for them to do. That's one thing. As I said, any meaningful search, if I'm looking for something, Google already saves. If you're actually logged into Google, they already saves all your search, right? So if I have already searched for this article, or if I have read this, and if I +1 it on Google itself, if I'm logged in, it's very easy for me to. So what I'm trying to say is, Facebook probably has a lot of information in terms of what you have liked, pictures, comments, blah, 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 whatever. But in terms of actual content, which you actually read, or which websites you like, or whatever.
Facebook knows that. They know it better than Google does sometimes.
Every news article, if you have to actually read it on Facebook, let's say Washington Post, you actually have to give the Washington Post application the permission, and then you can read through that. There are a lot of people who are very skeptical to actually go in and give that permission.
But Sreek, you don't actually. if you go to the Washington Post website,
right,
and go there after you've been logged into Facebook, they know that.
But Facebook doesn't want you to go to Washington Post website, right?
No, they don't. They'd rather you do it right through Facebook, but they know it.
Right.
They still have it.
But if you
That's what frictionless sharing is all about.
What I'm saying is, if you want to read it within Facebook, then you have to give that app the permission, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, most of it come in the feed.
Most of the
Alan, on this note, real quick, a lot of these companies are abandoning. I think the Washington Post is one of them. They're abandoning their social apps because all of us saw this in our Facebook feed.
The frictionless sharing garbage.
Yeah, I
exactly.
have not that, but I have friends as far as the sharing apps. I have friends who are reporters for the Washington Post, and every time she shares something, I never click on it because as soon as I click on it, it says, you agree to let me post on your wall. Screw that. So I just highlight, copy, and then paste in a Chrome tab, and then find the article that way. So we saw some stories a week or so ago about different news organizations abandoning those social sharing apps. And I think the most interesting thing about all of this, as a tangent, and then we can close and so we can move after you get through the last two things here. But two of the most viral destinations on the web, Facebook and Twitter, are basically closed ecosystems. And we see this.
And in fact, George Cozy just asked me the exact same question over on YouTube. He said, so is Facebook building their private internet? Yes, they are.
Absolutely. And Twitter to the same degree. Look how they've disenfranchised some of their developers, right? These companies have built up these great apps, and now they're yanking it because they want to control everything. They want their own ecosystem, and they're big. They're unique and powerful enough to be able to get away with it.
Let me ask you this: how many brands? Let's say there is 1 million.
We got to hurry. Go ahead, Sreek.
Yeah, there are 1 million brands out there, right? What percentage of that actually want to be on Facebook and publish their stuff, regardless of whether it's a newspaper or it's a jewelry shop, whatever it is, right? Excuse me. My point is, I use Facebook a lot. I have like 600 friends on Facebook. I don't read news content on Facebook. I am there to see my family and friends. No. Let me complete. So I am there to see the pictures of my family and friends, blah, 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 and the posts they make, funny gifs and all these things. You cannot meaningfully actually, if you click a like on a picture, that picture might have some weird title. You might not even know what is how is Facebook going to relate a funny cat pic with the text search you're going to do? It's not very easy.
It's not as hard as you think.
No, it isn't, but it is not as great as how Google can do it right now. Facebook doesn't even have a proper image search. Anyway, let's not go there. I understand the long game, right? And it's going to be probably successful. Now, about monetizing this, the companies need to really understand that regardless of what you search, is it really going to become revenue for the company? Is a company going to be able to show that? Is Facebook going to be able to show the company that, hey, you search for, search for this particular car. Is somebody going to go and check out that car on Facebook and then decide to buy? No.
Well, Sreek, here's the thing, though. I think, again, looking at the long game, Facebook wants to be the distribution engine for that content. So they'll say to somebody like the Wall Street Journal, hey, currently you've got this problem with people going to your website and they're getting, they expect it for free on your website. What if we charge them if they go through Facebook? We have a method to collect money from our users. We'll cut you in on part of it. We've got a method to do that now. We'll take our cut. We've got a platform for delivery. Everyone's happy.
So isn't it like Google charging money for, let's say, a brand to search their content and click-through rates and stuff like that?
But Google would never charge money that way because it's not intelligent. That's not the intelligent way to do things.
No, that's not the reason. The reason is they don't need to, because they make $12 billion a quarter from search.
Exactly. This is the thing. Why Facebook does not have an intelligent long game, because it's a dumb way to do things. When I read this, I was like, this is Facebook all over. Facebook goes after the short play again and again and again, and it's dumb. I mean, they should really, everyone at Facebook should be forced to learn the game of chess. That's would be my number one recommendation to everyone who works there.
I have trouble picturing Zuck playing chess. I really do.
Let me just say one thing. I actually completely agree with Alan about the long game. And to be very honest, right? You cannot underestimate Facebook and its 1 billion plus users. Monica, I completely disagree with you. You'll be surprised a few years from now how they actually are able to monetize this search. I mean, whatever I said,
Sreek,
these people,
yes,
hold on. These people, the people at Facebook are not dumb. They are pretty good at what they do. And there are a lot of hardcore fans for Facebook. So, you know,
it's very powerful to have a very controlling market share, yes. But if you don't use it in an intelligent way, your users can migrate very quickly.
And I think that's it. And I want to kind of bring that around to something that both Monica and Sreek asked me is, in your own ways, you were kind of saying, well, this seems like it would be something that's easy for Google to do on their own. And I think it is to some extent. The problem is Google really isn't set up to capture the relationships that people have with some of their things. And that's the thing that Facebook has, they understand, and that's what they're building into their search. Google doesn't have that yet.
Google has a lot.
Search plus your world is a very, very, very basic attempt at doing the same sort of thing, and I don't think it does it nearly as well as what Facebook is doing in the long game.
But Google has a number of other things. If you open your Gmail, depending on what's your content in the Gmail, they already show search ads, right? Which is very related.
A lot of what it's doing for those search ads are keyword matches, and those are fairly dumb. But Search Plus Your World is trying to give it some intelligence.
Well, I'm not a big fan of social search thingy, and I think social search has to go a long way before it really becomes a money generating machine as well as really meaningful. And I agree to.
Well, and I think that's what Google needs to learn from this exercise that Facebook is doing. Is that Facebook let me put it this way. I think Facebook understands the social nature of searching, and I don't think everything about searching is socially natured. But I think Facebook understands the social nature of searching better than Google understands this. Better than Google understands the social.
Alan, as good as Google is at search, in general, it's still flawed. And the example I use all the time is, what if you had an old high school friend named Justin Bieber or Bill Clinton, but they weren't that Justin Bieber or Bill Clinton? How would you ever find them on Google? You wouldn't, or Bing, or anybody. But you might find them if they were a friend of a friend from high school on Facebook. Google is absolutely going to study very carefully this. You know, both companies study each other and their innovations. And I just see...
my concern,
I'm surprised how bad some of the things are. Like, for example, I was curious the other day, what was the first post I ever posted on Google Plus? Back in July 11 or June or whatever it was. And there's no way to find that, right, on Google Plus. So I went to
there's no way to just say what's the first,
and I found it there.
It's not hard to put in. It's not hard to put in. That will take a easy push out. I think they can easily come back from that.
Yeah, but I think they're going to look at this and they're going to combine the voice search, that wonderful, click Google, Martin Van Buren, that wonderful TV ad, that stuff, and look at, I think that it's going to get, it's going to get better. It's proven.
It's going to get better.
Final thoughts, please. And let's roll. Alan.
Can I
Okay,
Sreek, quickly,
30
and then
seconds,
I'll give my final thought, and
then
we'll move on.
Alan, and then let's go to the next two topics, and then
I'll start. I actually read the article Dan posted about how it's going to help Google in the what is that, anti-competitive area where Google is a monopoly in search, and how this is going to actually help them, which is great. I completely agree with that. On the other hand, I believe Google's strength is not 10 years back. Google was probably known as the greatest search engine ever. Google's strength now is not just about that. It is about how Google's different products, whether it's Gmail, Maps, Google+, YouTube, you name everything, how they work together. And I'm not saying, and I can see the Alan's face, and I'm not saying that they work well together yet, or they even work together at all. But Google's future strength will be how they actually get all these things work together with search, and bring the social aspects to it. And Facebook will have a tough time beating that. I'm done.
Okay, for those of you who can't see my face, it looks something like this.
I don't like that word monopoly, by the way, for Google. They're
dominant position. We know what you mean.
Yeah. They're not. I mean, there's you know,
dominant position.
There's Ask Jeeves.
My. Oh yeah.
Alan, please. I'm sorry.
My final thought on this is that a lot of people, when Facebook started rolling this out, and when the news started coming out, a lot of people were incredibly dismissive of it. And I think it's got flaws. I think it has serious privacy concerns. I think there are a lot of other issues, but I don't think you can dismiss it out of hand. And I think Google, if they're smart, they are not dismissing it out of hand. And I don't think those of us who are big Google proponents should dismiss it out of hand either.
Okay, awesome.
There's a lot here that we need to learn from it.
Okay, we got 3 more topics and then our closing thoughts for the week. I guess this is Monica, right? Citing Momentum, Microsoft plans a 400% price increase for Windows 8. I think what they sell, the last number I heard was like 60 million licenses sold.
Monica, you're on mute.
80 million.
Dan.
Hello?
You need to read the chat.
Oh, just kidding. Okay. Well, it was great having Monica on, but she had to go.
Well, I'd love to. I'd actually like to talk about.
I didn't see her leave though. I don't see her on the thing.
She's
got these.
She's not leaving. She's
on mute.
Taking a break.
Okay, so well, we can do the other. Should we go back to this and then maybe she'll be back?
Hello? No, I'm here.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Monica.
No, okay. My closing thoughts. I really
apologize.
wanted closing thoughts on that last one. Okay. I wanted to say, I do feel strongly that Google Plus, with the Facebook and the Google Plus, and week after week we have an article. We have the one from Fast Company last week, 2 weeks ago, saying proof that Google Plus will prevail, and then Facebook stock price rose mysteriously, and then they introduced this graph search and violated everybody's privacy in order to do it. I feel like Google has their pieces in a stronger position to have a better, longer strategy. And I won't budge from that position, although I do feel that they have a lot of work to do on Plus long term. That's my final thoughts.
Okay, what about the Microsoft plans of 400%? Was that your story?
I put that one in. I just saw it go through my stream. It's late breaking news.
Tell us what that's about.
It's apparently
so popular.
Apparently Windows 8 is so popular that they need to boost the price by that much. 400% price increase for Windows 8.
But what's the starting and ending price? I mean, are we talking?
We're talking.
Upgrade pricing was $40, and it's now going to $200 for Windows 8 Pro. So
if you were buying a Windows
February
machine,
1st.
Alan, if you were buying a Windows machine tomorrow, I would buy a Windows. I wouldn't consider a Windows 8 machine right now.
Well, I don't think you can get one without Windows 8, can you?
Yeah, sure.
You can get older machines. You can't get new ones.
Can't get new ones.
If you build, can you still get the OEM Windows 7?
No.
Or just
Not officially.
Unless you load it.
Not unless you
Aside,
have
a
license
lot
key
of the
ready.
newer laptops are coming out with freaking locked bootloaders, so it's gonna be hard and difficult to load up the older one.
If you build your own machine like at Newegg with parts and stuff, can you still get? You can't get the OEM Windows 7?
Yes.
You can.
What means that you get it?
You
it's
can.
different, but you can't.
Can you legally obtain Windows 7 anymore?
If you got an old copy,
look on.
buy from your neighbor or something with the.
Just like when Windows 7 came out, I waited for a while and
Yes, you
stuck
can
with
still
XP.
buy Windows
7
on Newegg. So I didn't know that you could, but yeah.
They got some leftover copies in the back that you
Okay.
can buy.
Well, the other thing though is in the move to Windows 7, they were, they were addressing corporate concerns a lot because of the way they moved from XP to Vista. So they were saying there were legitimate downgrade licenses, and there were all sorts of things that they were trying to make it as easy as possible. With Windows 8, I think they want to get people on 8 as quickly as they can.
Yeah, if you have a shop with 20,000 employees with workstations, and you need to buy 2,000 computers, do you really? I mean, there are serious issues about logistics of training and stuff.
Yeah, but you probably already have licenses.
Oh no. Yeah, and to tell you the truth, we can get Windows 7 on our work laptops because we have an agreement, and that's not going away. In fact, we're buying new computers all the time.
Right. This isn't
Windows 7.
This isn't about corporate agreements. This is about going down to your local Staples and buying a copy of Windows 7, which you won't be able to do. And this is about how much it's going to cost you starting at the end of the month to upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 8. So it boils down to, if you might ever want to upgrade your machine, get the upgrade now, do what Anthony's doing, and just sit on your upgrade copy.
Okay.
That's that. Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't even how do you pronounce the name? Monty. How do you pronounce it? Monty.
I have no idea.
College.
This is a
player.
sports thing.
This is crazy. Hopefully Anthony or someone else. This guy apparently had
Manti Te'o.
Theo. Is it pronounced Theo?
Te'o.
Say it again.
Te'o.
Manti Te'o.
Te'o.
Okay. All right. So we agree on that. So this guy had a girlfriend for a year apparently, and then she died, and then he was grief-stricken. Then it turns out it was what's called a catfishing scam, where a fake identity is created on a social network. And apparently this is not the first time this has happened. Now there's speculation, like I saw a tweet from Donald Trump saying, this is just unbelievable. He's either incredibly stupid or ... But
And mind you, it takes Donald Trump to know incredibly stupid.
Does anyone have any thoughts on? Have you ever heard of catfishing before? And is this a plausible thing? If anyone, it's been all over the sports news. Any thoughts on this from anybody?
I don't know why it's as big of a story as it is. I don't know why it's front page of the sports page. I mean, beyond the fact that he's a sports, a semi-popular, on a semi-popular team, semi-popular player on a semi-popular team, who cares? I mean, this, like you said, this type of thing happens to nobody's probably more often than anyone wants to admit.
Look, I'll just say this, and I think this is enough to wrap it up. On the internet, nobody knows you're a cat.
Yeah, I guess it's all about, celebrity gets the Nigerian email and fell for it.
You would rather I say on the internet nobody knows you're a donkey? I mean, what
a Botswanian donkey.
With the dongle.
Okay, with a dongle.
Anyway, so let's wrap for the week.
Okay, so you don't want to do the...
No, I don't.
Okay.
And Michael Banks agrees with me, so that's two of us.
That's.
If you want to bring it up in your closing comments, you can.
Okay. All right, so let's start, I guess, with Sreek Menon.
How was your Google Plus week?
Nothing special. I was too busy. That's my...
With your wonderful children, your loud, boisterous children, full of life.
Full of life, yeah. Total fun. It's not very cold out here, so yeah. And, again, like last week, I didn't get too much time to be online, other than the usual spamming posts I do to spam you, Pam, and sometimes Alan as well.
And often Dan.
What
Sreek, I muted you a long time ago. I don't get those anymore.
Oh, shit.
Oh, my goodness. Pam, how was your Google Plus week?
It was actually pretty good, except for I had a lot of Chrome problems this week. A lot of Google Plus slow, Chrome slow, issues with notifications and getting all kinds of weird errors and loading errors and stuff like that. But other than that, it was fine.
Awesome. And Michael Ellis, what was the coolest thing this week? Other than your microphone doesn't work.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Muted myself to avoid the echo problem I was creating. So can you hear me now? Yes.
Yep, you're good.
I did Hangouts every day this week, every night, all evening long. I've been jam-packed with Hangouts, so now I really am pushing for all the features that I want in Hangouts. And it was great. All good stuff.
Awesome. And you've got we want to test the paid Google Apps accounts next week. So Michael, you've got one of those, right? So we could start.
Yep.
We get you to start. Now, if you start the Hangout, if you drop out or something, that doesn't nuke.
Nope, it doesn't change. I've tested that.
Okay.
I've tested that inadvertently, but I've tested that.
Okay.
And it's, if you start with someone who has a paid account, you get 15.
Okay.
Participants and whatever other features there are.
Because our big burst comes at the beginning, and then like right now we don't have 10 in. But all right, let me go to a comment, and then we'll go to Michael Banks next.
Yeah, we had this comment of somebody agreeing with Pam, apparently. John says, switch to Firefox this week. So tired of Chrome crashing all the time.
Oh.
You know what? We use Firefox at work and Chrome, and God, it's like forever for the thing to load. It's constantly, wait while we check for update. I want to click and have it pop up, very frustrating. Michael Banks, what is the what happened cool this week?
Yeah, I shared a blog post I wrote on Google Plus, and I got some interesting debates on why I still believe that a faceless brand is more efficient at putting out a message over a personal brand. So it was an interesting conversation on that.
Can you elaborate? You mean like use a generic name or some kind of brand name as opposed to Michael Banks, you mean?
Yes.
Of course, if Michael Banks gets arrested for DUI and it's national news, you definitely want, Yeah, I learned that. I had a restaurant called Dan's Grill and Bar, and somebody fired a gun in the parking lot. And all the news stories said Dan's Grill and Bar. And I was so wishing it was like, South Winchester Tavern or something. I could just change the name, but you can't change it.
And that's basically the point, because they tie a lot of things to your person. If you're a personal brand, whatever you do, you're going to be held accountable for it. That goes along with what you say and what you do. And the company can get away with that. That's how Eric Schmidt can jump off the deep end, and Google won't be held accountable, even though he's a CEO. I'm talking about lower level people.
Pam, what were we going to say?
I was just gonna say, you remind me of this one guy who did all these different things, and then wrote about them back in the 80s. Remember George Plimpton or something like that? And he used to he tried professional football, and then he tried doing this and that and the other thing. How many things have you done? You need to write that stuff up. You need to write stuff up.
I'm actually currently reading Guy Kawasaki's book, Ape, about publishing a book.
You know what? He doesn't need any more plugs. So go ahead.
And I'm reading simultaneously. I've got on my
angry about that.
On my Nexus 7, I've got Guy Kawasaki's book, and on my my beautiful Samsung Galaxy Note 2.
Yeah.
I've got Stephen King's book on writing, which I'm reading, because I got a couple books in me I'm thinking about, and I've started a couple, and so to be announced.
Try the autobiography.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You're really good at that because you already know it, right?
Well, I don't have to do a whole lot of research, right?
Yeah.
Look for I probably have one fiction and one nonfiction book coming at some point. M. Monica, what was the highlight of your week?
Oh boy. The
Other
highlight
than being
of
on
my
Google
week.
Plus Week, of course.
Naturally.
It's only just started. I'd say the highlight of my week was today, because I was lying in the sun with both of my dogs next to me, and I was thinking how lucky I am to have two wonderful dogs and a sunny day. I was just enjoying the moment.
Absolutely.
I really like to have little moments. I don't know.
So Dan, since we're going down the stream, how was your Google Plus week?
Right.
Mine was good. It was excellent. Lots of stuff going on. I'm still. I got my buddy who is the managing editor of one of my papers. Who had a heart attack, but it was great to see him better and joking around and stuff. He's still not, fully back into the groove yet, but he's going to make it. So that's exciting.
That's great to hear.
And yeah, absolutely. It's it's a check, right? So, and then I guess the lots of news stories. The one that really was sort of disgusted me was the whole Lance Armstrong thing. It reminds me of Milli Vanilli when I saw some stand-up comedian at one of the award shows. He made some crack before Milli Vanilli, the group that famously won a Grammy and did that song "Girl, You Know It's True," and were eventually exposed as being a fraud. That they really the two actors they hired, the actor dancers models, weren't actually the singers on the album. I saw a stand-up comedian about a year earlier say, "Oh yeah, and Milli Vanilli really sing on their albums." So it was sort of like the best kept secret in Hollywood, and it went on long, and then finally they were exposed in an interview, and it was just that's kind of the way I feel about this whole bicycle thing and Lance Armstrong. It's just all these kids who looked up to him, and he was living a lie, and we're all human, we all make mistakes, and I'm not going to belabor this, but people actually, like one woman who actually just repeated a conversation that she heard Lance Armstrong when he was in the hospital tell his doctor that he had taken this, and she said it, and then he called her, the bitch word, and sued her. He actually sued her, but it was all true. And then he comes on here on Oprah's thing, and I was watching this, and I was like, I don't believe a single freaking word this guy says. I have no respect for this guy. He's a pathological liar, a cheat, and he deprived all those other people who came in second of victory. So I'm just disgusted with the whole thing.
I got to stop you on that. I got to stop you on that one, though, Dan. And we've got some comments on this, but I got to stop you on it. He didn't deny the guy who came in second place. The guy who came in second place also was doping and had already
obviously anybody else
had already lost his second place trophy. So
athletics should be about your athletic abilities, not about who has the best pharmacist.
Couple of quick comments. Milli Vanilli got sold down the river by their ridiculous producer, and Lance is 10,000 times worse than Milli Vanilli.
Fab Morvan, and what's the other name? Trivia question. Milli Vanilli, Fab Morvan and Rob Palacios, right? Or something like that.
Finally, we have this suggestion for you. The Stephen King book on writing is top-notch. It's actually very good, Dan. I don't really care for his novels, but his book on writing is top-notch. So there's yet something else for you to read and delay writing your book.
That's very true. It's one of the best
read.
Books.
Yeah,
it's one of the best books on writing that is out there.
I'll give it a 20-second thing and then go to Anthony. On writing, John Grisham, because I'm ADD, my biggest stumbling block for fiction, because I have a great story. I could tell you guys probably, but I don't want to give it up publicly. But I have a novel I've been working on in my head for years, like 12 years. And the big thing is, like, John Grisham plots the whole thing out ahead of time. Alex Haley, the author of Roots, said, just start writing. And that's sort of like, from what I've heard so far, I'm not done with King's book. He says he just puts crazy, wild, interesting people in a situation and starts writing, and he's not really sure where it's going to end up, right? So that is the most exciting thing, that you can write a novel when you don't have the non-ADHD skill to be able to, outline the whole thing before you start writing the first word. And then, Alan, I guess you got that, and they'll go to Anthony.
Yeah, Kevin gives an answer to your trivia question, and then he asks, "Why do I know so much about Milli Vanilli?"
Why do we all ask ourselves the same question all the time, Kevin. Rob,
so Anthony,
the latest. Anthony, do tell. You've had 10 minutes warning now, Anthony. You got to give us something. Give it up, baby.
Well, my Google Plus week stunk because it seemed like every time that I got into a conversation on, one post or another, it was basically me arguing against everyone else, whether it be Lance Armstrong or term limits or whatever I was discussing at that very moment. But
did you stand up for what you did you stand up for your position?
Oh, gun rights. There you go, gun rights. That's another argument too.
Did you stand up for your position? That's all I have to ask.
Well, absolutely, I stood up for my
that's what counts.
Positions. But this isn't very much Google Plus related, but I found it amusing in the general news streams. Is Jennifer Lawrence won a Golden Globe Award, and I'm gonna butcher her name, but I'm gonna do it anyways. And she made the comment, "I beat Meryl," in a reference to Meryl Streep, and everyone jumped on her back because they thought that she was just being nasty or what have you. But what makes it so great is that it was actually a quote from a movie that Meryl Streep was in, and the fact that I think she did beat Meryl Streep, and that she was able to use that quote, and that she did use that quote, I found it very amusing. And I have no idea who Jennifer Lawrence is, but I thought it was creative.
Oh, she's the Hunger Games girl.
Well, there you have it. She's a Hunger Games girl.
So Dan seems to have disappeared for the moment. So I guess I get to talk about my Google Plus week a little bit. I had a good week. I mean, there's a lot of things that are. I got some good news. I got some tentatively good news. A lot of things are currently simmering on the stove, and I can't wait to see how they come out. So I'm trying to remain hopeful as I can be anyway, and see how all of that goes. I had a lot of good conversations this week. I see that the results of Krista Ray's photo hunt are beginning to come out, and I'm not very optimistic about how I did this round, but it's always fun to see those pictures when they come out. So overall, it's been a good week for me.
Awesome, Alan, and
I want to give one programming note. We had
go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We reminder that several of us are now also doing a show on Monday evenings called Our Android Week, also run by Dan. We've got a couple of good stories already cooking up for that one, including some talk about LG blaming Google for the Nexus 4 shortages, and a little bit about Google's Eric Schmidt swinging by China to drum up some Android support. So you'll be seeing that Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on this YouTube channel, with Dan McDermott, myself, and several of our friends on the panel.
So when I dig up those Android stories, you want me to keep putting them in this regular doc or what?
You can put them there, and I'll move them.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks so much to the panel. We appreciate it, and to the viewers and the people who comment. We love it. Awesome. Thank you very much. We do this for you. We're all volunteers, and we do this for fun. And we believe it or not, we actually give up our very active Friday night social lives so we can be here with you and talk about geeky stuff.
Like donkeys and dongles and
it's really tough for us.
Thong Thursday.
We normally never talk about geeky stuff, but we just,
Absolutely.
some Fridays we're willing to lower the bar.
It's all about lowering the bar. We are the BuzzFeed of Hangouts. Okay, so anyway, thank you all so much for watching and commenting and stuff. We appreciate it. We're here every Friday night. Android Week is Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern USA time.
USA time?
Well, we have an international audience.
6 p.m. Pacific.
9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Monday night. And the Google Plus Week is 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. See,
Yes.
I just did math there, right, Pam? You see what I did there?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate it.
And Dan is also guest starring in a fake news show. And so
when is
am I.
that happening again?
This is going to be the first Tuesday of every month, and it's become so popular that I think we're going to be doing it on a weekly basis. If you can't participate every week, Dan, that's fine. But I'll be there every week. It'll be every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time.
So check out M space Monica on Google Plus. You'll find her right away. And her thumbnail looks kind of like this. It's better.
That's right.
This was a little pixelated, but that's what she looks like. And check her out.
Craig Shipp is also a regular.
And you said that's Tuesday at what time?
Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Pacific.
See, she can.
It's called Hangout Improv.
Because I always mess it up.
I can do the math.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so very much for watching, and the rest of you guys hang out. I'm going to give you 2 30-second synopses of my book, which is top secret. And the rest of you folks, thank you so much. We love you all, and have a wonderful, absolutely epic, inspirational Google Plus week.